School is in session, kids. One by one, the school buses started pulling up to Grand Park in Westfield. And guess who is back today? Jonathan Taylor back. Anthony Richardson back. Michael Pittman Jr. back. Shane Steichen back. Colts camp underway with report day today. And the good news is, and oh, what a difference a year makes. What a difference a year makes in the fact that by at least last count or all account that I've heard, everybody there and seemingly everybody happy. That wasn't the case a year ago. There are usually storylines of somebody that, and you see it around the league, and it always ends up working itself out 9 times out of 10. Staring contest, somebody blinks. But the Colts are reporting, and all things appear to be good, except one player. And he's not unhappy, I'm not saying that, but could he be? Could there be a little bit of tension for one player on the Colts roster? And some of that tension might be self-inflicted. And not necessarily, well, kind of directly, but we'll get to that. As the Colts are in Westfield, and we will, of course, earlier this morning on the morning show, the wake-up call with Kevin and Andy, you heard Michael Pittman Jr. on the show. You heard their first-round pick, Latu Latu, who joined them. We will play some of that audio for you and a couple of other clips that have been spoken by players as they report today. The other big story, because that was a big one, unquestionably, that's the dominant story and will be for the next couple of weeks, is football is back. And for you folks that have been thirsting for it, pining for it, jonesing for it, looking for it, it is here in terms of the NFL season already back underway now with training camp. And before you know it, we'll be watching the Hall of Fame game. And then before you know it, it's opening Sunday. And then before you know it, you're scraping your windshield. But the other big news of the day, no, it's not. Indiana with a furious comeback falling short against Eberline Drive. Is that right, Jimmy? Eberline Drive?
Yes. Yep.
The TBT tournament, Indiana trying to advance out of that region and basically go to the Final Four. And it was not the magic of 2002. It was not the magic of 1992. It was not the magic of 1987. It was not the magic of 1981. It was not the magic of 1976. It was not the magic of 1973, 53, or 40. There are all your years that Indiana's made the Final Four. It was not the magic of that. But Yogi Ferrell did lead a furious comeback, but Indiana falls short. That is not the basketball news that is the big deal today. The basketball news that is the big deal on this Hump Day Wednesday, on a beautiful day outside, is the fact that Andrew Nembhard has reportedly agreed to an extension with the Indiana Pacers that will pay him $57 million over the next 3 years and keep him contractually bound to the blue and gold through the 2027 season. This means that the following players now are contractually bound to Indiana through 27. Andrew Nembhard, Pascal Siakam, Tyrese Halliburton, Ben Shepherd, Aaron Nesmith, Obi Toppin, Johnny Furphy. That's a pretty darn good, for 3 years out, that's a pretty solid piece. Now, the next question, if you will, the next item on the checklist for the Pacers, probably 2 guys, maybe 3. What do you do with Miles Turner? How much do you give and for how long an extension for TJ McConnell, who falls into that category of, like I talked about with Siakam, different players, I realize, don't misunderstand me. But in order to secure the benefit of what they bring in the now, you're going to have to probably commit yourself to something that's going to be tougher to deal with on the back end of it. And then Benedict Mathurin. And that's the one, Jimmy Cook, that I think that we forget about. It's Benedict Mathurin of, as these players are all getting their due and getting their extension, then there has to be money left over for some point for Mathurin, who at one time it was thought was going to be an absolute centerpiece, Robin to Batman level player for the Pacers. But good afternoon to you again. My name is Jake Query. Eddie Garrison here as well. You just heard the voice of Jimmy Cook. It's Query and Company here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Jimmy, we're chock full of storylines today, which is what we want when we're in July, right?
Yeah, I mean, you've got a crossroads of Pacers news, almost like they couldn't handle, this is obviously clearly a joke, but they couldn't handle the idea of the Colts once again coming to the forefront of our lexicon over the next couple of months because players are reporting to camp and you're getting first statements and you're seeing all the nice social media posts, everybody walking in, getting set for Grand Park. You bring up the Pacers side of things. For them to be able to retain Andrew Nembhard for the foreseeable future, the biggest thing you need to look at is the cost and the percentage against the cap that you're likely looking at over the lifetime of this deal. And it's still an incredibly fair value for both sides. Andrew Nembhard is getting a pay raise that will start next season. They will void the last year of his rookie deal and go straight into that extension. It'll be a sizable raise of $16 million a year that first year, and then gradually increase until it gets to $20 million, give or take, depending on where the range is of those salary breakdowns. Those are just projections, but give or take by the time the end of the deal is done. You are getting a player that shined for you in the postseason last year. That was the reason that you're able to stay in games without Tyrese Haliburton in that Celtics series. That was an asset for you for the entire run to the conference finals, and that showed you flashes of what he can be as well during the regular season. But it's not regular season performance that got him paid. It's what he did in the postseason and the thought that that was a turning point moment for him as a Pacer, another feather in the cap of the Pacers front office of Chad Buchanan and Kevin Pritchard with regards to player development, being able to retain one of your own and being able to retain it at a reasonable cost to you. The reason I bring up the cost of all of this, and I know that John's probably going to heckle me when he gets in here a little bit later today for this. I understand that Pacers fans probably don't want to hear this when you retain a player that you enjoy as much as Nembhard the day of the contract being reported. But the talk earlier this summer, and it was exemplified by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and the more you watch Team Canada, the more you get what he's saying. I think Andrew Nembhard is best utilized as a true point guard. I think that is where he excels the most. And that position, as a starter, is occupied on this roster. Doesn't mean it's a bad signing. What it means, though, is because the value of that contract is so great, Jake, and this is me looking at a different perspective of it than, yay, the Pacers retain one of their own. Let's say 2 years from now, they are at a point where they're missing a piece at shooting guard, or they're missing a piece at small forward, and you feel comfortable with whoever your backup point guard is at that point in time. Nembhard becomes a luxury item. He becomes an item that 2 years from now, if for some reason the fit is there with the Pacers, but you feel like you could get an even better asset for him with his contract value to the cap, he becomes a valuable trade piece 2 years from now if you need to go down that road. I'm not saying they will, but his contract, when you look at the contract, Jake, itself, your initial reaction isn't, holy cow, they overpaid for this guy and they're married to him. That's not my takeaway from it.
Especially 3 years from now, right?
It is a fair contract value for a player that you want to retain in blue and gold. But if for some reason you're looking at pieces 3-4 years down the line, which is no doubt Chad Buchanan and Kevin Pritchard are running those simulations or thoughts in their head of where is this window for us, Andrew Nembhard ends one of two ways for the Pacers. Either a very high-level contributor that is a Pacer for most of his career, or a valuable trade asset in 3 to 4 seasons because his contract is not an overpay. It's a great value deal.
Now, and for him, it's a good deal because he is still going to hit the free market, the open market at an age where he can cash in. Mm-hmm. The big question I've always had with sports contracts, and it's different situation to situation. I don't know that you go as a hardline rule. A lot of it depends on the age of the player. But the question becomes, and that you have to ask yourself when you're doing this, and I'm sure Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan and Chris Ballard and whoever else do this, are you paying the player for who they've been, or are you paying the player for who you expect them to be? And in Nembhard's case, that's still, to me, a question mark. And I know that that's very pessimistic sound. I think he's a wonderful player, don't get me wrong, and he's been exceptional for them.
Can it be both with him?
I think it is both, but what I'm saying is this. You're taking a gamble a little bit on he's been spectacular, especially of late. But he also has been a Johnny-come-lately onto the scene, not for those of us that watch the Pacers game in and game out. And I realize in the NBA they do scouting reports and they watch film. And, I mean, it's not like the staff of the Washington Wizards would know less about Andrew Nembhard than two yakking heads in Indianapolis.
Right.
I mean, I get it. But player-wise and whatever else, he hasn't necessarily been huge on the radar. There have been players that we've seen that came kind of out of nowhere, had great moments when it mattered most, got a big contract out of it, and then were good players, but maybe never lived up to the big-time contract. I mean, Crozier comes to mind, really good player, but coming off of the finals, it was like, oh my gosh, they do whatever you have to get this guy because he's only going to get better. And he was a good, solid player, but I don't know that he was ever a top 4 in payment level player. Yeah. In Nembhard's case, and I love him, don't get me wrong, but that's the question is, does it now put you at a spot where it comes at the cost of being able to retain both Turner and Mathurin? Those are numbers that have to be worked out. One thing that I noticed about Andrew Nembhard that I loved, it was in the Knicks series. And it was the big 3 that he hit. I can't even remember which game it was now. Would it have been game 3? When he hit like a 35-footer as the shot clock's running out late in the game. And Gainbridge Fieldhouse goes bonkers. And Nembhard turns around because New York immediately called a time, and he's walking back to the huddle, and the team is kind of coming out towards him. And he's getting a little of the Bartolo Colon treatment of, I just hit my first ever career home run, and so they're going to vacate the dugout and play the joke on me. The players are going bonkers, but they're not immediately going towards him. And Nembhard is walking off very cool and very unfazed, and he gets to about the half-court line, which is probably 4 steps from where he took the shot, and this small, sly grin comes out from underneath him. And this is a guy that typically plays with ice water in his veins and is 1 aspirin from a coma. He's not an overly exuberant nor vociferous player. But the reality of the moment hit Andrew Nembhard right there, and partially to illuminate the fact that he was as incredulous of hitting that shot as everybody that was in the crowd. I thought it was a moment of reality and humility for him, but it also was a coming of age of him realizing that his moment in the NBA was coming further and further in between of moments that were too big for him. And in that moment, he's hit big shots before. He did it in L.A. as a rookie. I mean, he's had really big games. And that moment, probably he knew at that time that he had just solidified himself a heavy contract. Now, in terms of contracts and extensions, let's talk about West 56th Street and Grand Park with the Colts. There are those players that are your core players. Anthony Richardson, signed, waiting to be healthy here.
By the way, Ballard just revealed something about Anthony Richardson before you get to this next point you're trying to make. He says that no restrictions or limitations for Richardson.
Now, does that, Jake, we talked about this yesterday, and we need to hear the clip, I guess, to fully have the context, but does that mean, like you and I brought up on yesterday's show, that they, much like they did to start this season, are saying a day off for him would be a concern unless we tell you otherwise?
That's the position they just put themselves in.
That's what I'm reading it as.
Unless although to be fair, quarterbacks always get days off, right?
Sure.
I mean,
but like, an undue day off.
If they say unscheduled day off, then you go, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But I would expect nothing more than for them to say, because they have promised all along that at this point that he was going to have no restrictions because the shoulder is
right.
The one, as Bill Polian told us, that's the one area where you can most trust the timeline the doctor tells you. But you know that Richardson's in the mix and he is a centerpiece. You know that Michael Pittman is now extended and he is a centerpiece. Jonathan Taylor a year ago got his extension and is a centerpiece. Then you have, obviously, your offensive line. You have Quentin Nelson. Defensively, DeForest Buckner. You now have Latu. You've got some questions to answer about what you do with Kwity Paye, but Zaire Franklin's a solid piece for you. Now, there's one player on the Colts that is an important piece, partially based on the position that he plays. The center position in football, I think, is an important one, not only for the obvious reasons. You need their experience of looking over defenses. Jeff Saturday was very underrated at this, of being able to look over and immediately read different defensive lineups and stunts that were coming. Jeff Saturday was also very good. You'd see him always pointing and this and that. Some of that was obviously football theater. But to be able to say as the center and look up over and say, wait a minute, 54 is now lined up over the guard, and the last time that he did that, 58 on the other side blitzed. And to recognize those patterns and be able to signal those out and stave what is coming because of familiarity and going through the mental Rolodex. That's very underappreciated and overlooked at the center position. Not only that, but you are also somebody, goes without saying, that coming out of stance, you've got to be more immediate in the strength of your stance because, unlike everybody else, you're hesitated by the half a second of snapping the ball. Then you're getting up in your stance. You got to be ready to go. I think center is the least interchangeable position of any on the offensive line. I know that as a tackle, it's a different foot discipline than guard. But oftentimes you see tackles that can play guard, or you see a right tackle that can go over to left tackle and whatever else. The center is the one that you see the fewest number of players. They've even tried in the past to draft guys from different positions and convert them to a center or vice versa, and more often than not, it doesn't work out. And then you end up with Samson Satali as a Band-Aid for 2 years. In Ryan Kelly's case, he's been a very, very good player, very smart player. And all of those things that I mentioned to you show his value. At no fault of Ryan Kelly's, nor anyone's, obviously, sometimes things happen that are, tragic. Obviously, losing a child was an awful thing, and prioritizes and puts football in perspective. I want to be very clear that I'm certainly understanding of that. But Ryan Kelly, I remember a year ago telling Kevin and I when I was doing the morning show then, Ryan Kelly was the first to say that was a very difficult period for me, not only personally but in football. I lost weight. I retreated. My focus wasn't there. I wasn't 100% in. Totally understandable and excusable. Ryan Kelly, not that he's listening, but I want it to be very clear. Everyone understands that, and that is a perfectly sufficient reasoning. But whether it is because of Ryan Kelly or not, the history of injury is a little unfair because he's been pretty durable and pretty reliable. But at times when he, through the personal challenges or obstacles, and then also at times the physical ones, for whatever reason, he has been labeled or tagged or – you remember – did you ever see the Peanuts cartoons, Charlie Brown?
Sure,
one of you guys?
yeah, absolutely.
You remember Pigpen?
Yeah.
That was my nickname growing up.
That is the least surprising thing that has come out of this show in the almost year that we've done it.
Would you like to know why?
I would think there are 3 characters that you remind me of. Pigpen's not one, but tell me why.
Every time I'd play baseball during the summer, I'd always be covered in dirt by the end of the weekend. My jersey would look like dirt. It looked like I wore half the field.
Okay, I can see that. For you, Eddie, the 3 characters fictionally that I think of that you most remind me of.
In Peanuts or in all of lore?
In all of lore.
Okay.
One of them is Spanky from our gang.
Okay.
One of them is, and I don't remember the names because I've only seen the movie once, but the catcher in the Sandlot.
Oh, okay.
And then the other one, which is probably the most common, is Vern from Stand By Me. Partially because you look like you carry a little plastic comb and that you bring around with you in case anybody needs it. You probably like cherry-flavored Pez. But
Ham, by the way.
What's that?
Ham, to answer your question.
That's the name of the kid from the Sandlot?
Correct.
Okay. So, but in Pigpen, in the cartoon Peanuts, he always had, because he had the dirt on him and the smell, he had the little squiggly lines that followed him everywhere he went.
Yeah.
With Ryan Kelly, there are the little squiggly lines that follow him everywhere he goes, and those squiggly lines for the last 2 or 3 years have been, how much longer does Ryan Kelly want to play? Is Ryan Kelly fully in? Is Ryan Kelly thinking about retirement? Is he a guy that is constantly on a 1 year, we got another year out of it? Okay, great. Kind of like if you've ever been in a situation in life where you're living paycheck to paycheck, and you're like, man, I got all the way to payday before I had to start borrowing money from somebody, and then boom, that deposit hit. Thank goodness. We've all been there.
We're going to have George Bremer on a little bit later in the show, Jake, but that's been a question on everybody's mind, is his future.
Okay.
But he says, quote, Ryan Kelly says, quote, Colts have made it pretty clear they don't want to do an early extension. Veteran center entering the final year of his current deal says it is what it is. Isn't that mindset
Eddie,
for him?
Were we talking about this right before the show?
Yep.
Okay. Here's Ryan Kelly.
My bad.
When asked about whether or not he is going to return after this year.
Yeah, from what from our standpoint, is the Colts have basically made it pretty clear that they don't want to do an early extension. So that's what it is.
In my defense, I was not here for that.
No, you were here.
My point was, and I thank you for the actual audio with that clip, wouldn't somebody that was on the verge of retirement once again not take a tone like that about contract negotiations?
So my point is this. Ryan Kelly, if he does in fact want to come past this year, be it fair or not, be it just or unjust, the reality is that the circumstances, which may well be beyond his control, of the last couple of years of his availability have created a narrative that he has to understand that the Colts have probably already started to set in place the thought process of moving on of football without him. And so from a financial standpoint and a roster standpoint, they probably already, Jimmy, have started to look at and to a great extent devise and spread money under the guise that he is not going to be here. And so if now...
Because they're not going to pay him, or because he doesn't want to be here?
Because he's how old?
30, 31?
Okay. What I'm saying is, at some point with everything, you have to look at, again, you go with players of, am I paying them based on what they're going to be or what they've been? And in Ryan Kelly's case, who's been a very good player, a wonderful guy, all of those things. I have nothing bad to say about Ryan Kelly, except for at some point you look at it and you say, and yes, Jeff Saturday played well past that age, but I think I'm not saying it's Ryan Kelly's fault, but the pig pen waves around him for 2 or 3 years now have been, how much longer is he going to play? And I think he's kind of insinuated in years past, I'm not going to say that he's come out and said, I'm reaching the end of my career, but he never defied that logic. So I think the Colts already started a plan in place or started to make the bed of, from a contractual standpoint, salary cap standpoint, other such things. We have allocated money for ourselves to sign extensions, but Ryan Kelly is one that we already have started to figure out and formulate the way in which we are going to find a replacement for him. So he wasn't in the hopper of, now, I could be wrong in that. In 2 weeks from now, we might find out that he just signed a huge extension. But I think the Colts have already started to figure out monetarily making the plans of what their cap looks like a year from now and 2 years from now without an extension for him being in that mix. So now when he comes and says, I'm interested actually in an extension, I think the Colts thought process in that is, we understand, but based on all of the things that I just laid out, we're starting to look in another way.
And they just drafted Tanner Bortolini. That's the incumbent, I would most likely assume.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So they have the succession plan seems to be in place, right? Now, They're going to have to find out with him.
I mean, but you're going off of, at that stage, a 4th-round draft pick we haven't seen play a snap. And my question is, I don't disagree with you, Jake. Maybe they've allocated the resources already, and maybe it's fair that the reason they did that is because Ryan Kelly has been somewhat non-committal publicly about his future. But if the 31-year-old center is now saying publicly or striking a tone publicly of, I want to get an extension done, that doesn't sound like the tone of somebody that's ready to hang it up after this season.
That's my point.
Right. But my point is, against your setup of Colts allocating funds, is it smart to turn away from a proven commodity at center when so much is banked on the security and stability of protecting your quarterback? Does that now reevaluate that decision for the Colts if he's all of a sudden like, no, I still got a couple years left in me?
Well, that's fair, except for that, and I don't know, I have not looked at the free agency market of centers, et cetera. I mean, it may well be that the Colts look at it and say, either in-house or through a one-year rental Band-Aid, we can fill that position with the same level of production that we would anticipate from Ryan Kelly for much less the money that we would anticipate or that Ryan Kelly has insinuated or his representation that he would want. I think that's where they are. I mean, for Ryan Kelly to show up on day one, Eddie, play it one more time what Ryan Kelly had to say about his possibility of signing me on now. For him to say this on day one, go ahead.
Yeah, from what from our standpoint, is the Colts have basically made it pretty clear that they don't want to do an early extension. So, is what it is.
Okay, for him to say that on day one means that he was told that well before now. I mean, it wasn't like he got there this morning and they told him that. So that means that to me, exactly that. I mean, it made it clear, like, hey, this is probably going to be it. And I don't think it's a huge controversy. I don't think he's a guy that Ryan Kelly, by his character, does not appear to be one that is going to create distraction or hold out or whatever else. But it is one, and this is the good news. The good news for Colts fans is it is the one thing that it is the one storyline that you're going to have to pay attention to, because fortunately the rest of them have taken care of themselves. We don't have it yet. We don't have a quarterback that we don't know if he's healthy. We don't have, well, we kind of do, but we don't have a running back that's holding out. We don't have a star wide receiver that's being a diva. This is the good news. The good news is that this is the one storyline, right? And it's not a huge one, but I just simply think that the precedent, the conversation, the narrative around Ryan Kelly for 2 or 3 years has now, maybe prematurely or maybe organically, caused the timeline of them starting to look at life in the huddle beyond Ryan Kelly. Big Ten Media Day still taking place. Did you see, and I saw it, guys. I think it was Jennifer that sent it to me on Twitter, X-Twitter, I don't know. I can't, there are certain things you just can't unsee. Your retinas burn, your eyes water. You try to then go and look at videos of puppies and sunsets and rainbows and waterfalls to cleanse your lens. But someone sent me the picture of the deflated duck on the banks of the river. The Oregon Duck, they had to deflate it eventually. But Big Ten Media Day does continue. We're going to talk Purdue and Indiana. We'll begin that conversation next, and then a lot more about what's going on at Grand Park and with Andrew Nembhard over the course of today. It's Query & Company here on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. So if you're just joining us, Ryan
Where have you
Kelly
been?
said that that's right, where have you been? Ryan Kelly would like, well, I didn't, to be fair, it wasn't like he necessarily said, I'm looking for an extension and the Colts have made it clear they don't want one. He just said the Colts have made it clear that they're not looking to extend, so it is what it is.
Well, he said that he and his representatives approached the Colts about staying here long term, and that was their response.
Yeah, so that's and again, Kelly's the kind of guy that for some players that might be an issue. He does not strike me as one that will be like some sort of an issue that will bleed over, but we shall see. Also, Andrew Nimhard, speaking of extensions, did agree to one today with the Pacers. We'll continue talking about that, but joining us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line, the Big Ten Media days, I guess, have taken place. The team that probably outside of Indiana is generating and creating the least amount of conversation or buzz, and I want to know if that's warranted or if people are sleeping on it, is Purdue. Joining us now from the Lafayette Journal and Courier is Sam King, who covers the Boilers. Sam, we'll begin with that. I mean, there is almost it seems ubiquitous storyline from everybody is that Purdue is bottom of the barrel of the Big Ten and that they have not done much to their roster from a year ago. That's a lazy take, or there seems to be evidence that would be accurate?
I think it's kind of strange. I was talking with Nathan Baird from the Indy Star, who covers the Boilers there yesterday, and also some other people that voted in these preseason polls with Cleveland.com, with USA Today, and nobody seems to want to confess to having picked Purdue last. But when you look at all of these preseason prognostications, Purdue is kind of consensus last place in the Big Ten, 18th out of 18. So somebody somewhere is picking the Boilers last. I had Purdue maybe more in that 13 to 14 range, and not that that's great, but I think that's probably what people are looking at is Michigan State has a new head coach. Indiana has a new head coach, and that kind of creates a little bit of buzz. Purdue didn't get that same kind of rub last year, obviously, with a new head coach, but I think that this might be a great thing for Purdue because you're either going to meet expectations or you're going to exceed expectations based on where people think you're going to land. And I think that Purdue really can exceed expectations. The downside, and maybe this plays into it, is Purdue's schedule is clearly one of the toughest in the country when you see that you've got the Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Oregon, Notre Dame. Not a lot of room for gimme wins, and outside of that Indiana State game to open the season, there's not a game on the schedule you can point to and say Purdue should be the team that wins that game running away.
If you're Ryan Walters and you're looking at it and you're looking over your schedule and you're looking at your team and you're saying to yourself, here's where I feel good. On the nights that the last thing that he's looking at before he goes to bed that allows him to sleep peacefully at night is what?
You have a quarterback who's gone through a full year of being a starter, and even though Hudson Card is a senior, Walters alluded to this yesterday during one of the media availabilities he had during the day, was he's really like a sophomore because at Texas he started a few games as an injury fill-in, but he was basically a backup just waiting for a chance to play. And when he was the starter there, he knew as soon as the starter is healthy, I'm going back to the bench. So last season, being a guy that played through 11 games, missed the Northwestern game with an injury, and then comes back and he's healthy. Last year, he was beat up quite a bit. I think Hudson told me yesterday he had an AC joint sprain and also some busted ribs that he was playing through. So you hope that, that's healed, and then you've got that kind of veteran leader that's kind of runs the team, is the go-to guy that everybody looks up to, and also now is very familiar with the system and West Lafayette in general, and is that kind of captain that becomes the face of your program.
Is it just the level, Sam, of them being projected last that draws the ire? Like, I get it, nobody wants to be in that spot, but in terms of looking at their schedule, looking at the roster changes or lack thereof to some extent year over year, like you said that they should probably be in the 13 to 14 range. I mean, the reality is we're still talking about them in the bottom of the Big Ten, no?
Yeah, and the reality is Indiana and Purdue are in a conference where there are football powers, probably never going to consistently jump over the Michigans and Penn States and, Ohio States of the world. And then on top of that, you throw in four programs, and USC, Washington, and Oregon traditionally are, longtime top 25 teams, national championship contenders, things of that sort. So that probably knocks you down a few more rungs. But, I think that 18 is probably being just a little bit of thinking what Purdue lost more than what it gained. And I know there's not, as far as year-over-year players that you saw last year coming back, maybe not as much, but the players that Purdue picked up in the transfer portal, a few guys from Georgia, some other guys that were key positions, building depth, and people forget Purdue was beat to crap on the offensive line last year and was almost to the point of drawing ticket numbers and pulling fans out of the stands to play offensive line by the end of the season last year. So there's just a lot of things that contributed to a 4-8 season last year, and then you lose a Deion Burks in the transfer portal, you lose a Nick Scorton in the transfer portal. I understand why people would think Purdue's going to fall off even more than the 4-8 season of a year ago, but I probably more so because I'm around the program consistently every day. I see what these new players are coming in and contributing, and see that there's potential there to kind of not shock the world or anything, but win some games that people don't expect you to win.
Yeah, I mean, part of it, the schedule's just tough, man. I mean, their schedule, we went over it yesterday. Jimmy, you had them like 2 or 3, I think we came up with that you looked at and you said that it looks like a win,
yeah.
But their schedule is tough. But let me ask you this, Sam. Sam King's our guest, by the way. He's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Ryan Walters now, whenever a new coach, you talked about, a new coach comes in, it kind of breeds this, like you get this energy, this new fresh wave that comes through. But he's been here now. In year 2, his approach seems different, if in any way, shape, or form. How?
I think he just more believes in what, when you're a head coach, everybody wants the title of head coach, and anybody who gets in that business wants to be the head coach. And then you become the head coach and you realize there's a lot of crap that comes with being a head coach you don't think about, especially in this day and age with the transfer portal and NIL and having to go out to events and fundraise and ask alumni for in some cases, hefty donations to go get the cornerback you want or the linebacker you want in the transfer portal. So there's a lot of learning that comes with the first year, and I think I'm actually writing about this right now. How last year was maybe more of a learning experience to better put Purdue in position to succeed moving forward, where now you're able to do with the money you've been able to raise, get in the conversation with some of the guys in the portal that you want, whereas a year ago, those people weren't even taking your call because, in this day and age of college football, players in the transfer portal typically have a number. And if you don't even meet that baseline number in terms of dollar figures, you're not going to get a conversation with the players. So that's where Purdue is now, is trying to bring in some of the guys and also just maybe have a better understanding of the system. So, he's always been confident. Even last year when the team was struggling, he felt like the Boilermakers were going to win every game, and he still in a lot of ways is like that. But he said yesterday, the man I was a year ago standing here and the man I am today, 2 totally different people just in terms of understanding what the position is of head coach.
Sam King is our guest, covers all things Purdue for the Journal and Courier. He joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Sam, let's throw the media ranking out for a second of them being projected to be bottom in the Big Ten. The schedule alone, we've mentioned a number of times during this conversation, is daunting. What is a fair expectation for this group, both from growth, both from wins and losses, regardless of where they wind up finishing compared to the disrespect in the poll?
Yeah, I think, if I was a fan, I would just want to see consistency, because last season that seemed to be the biggest issue. The offense would go out and play very well one game, but that would be the game where the defense didn't show up. And then the next week you get a game where, Iowa, Northwestern, games like that, where the defense played very well and the offense couldn't do anything. You kind of want to see consistency on both sides of the ball, and that's going to give you a chance in most games. And the way the schedule sets up, and we're talking about the games that probably aren't winnable, I really think that 2 of Purdue's first 3 games, those non-conference games, are winnable games. Indiana State should be a win. Notre Dame probably is a loss. And going to Oregon State could kind of define how the season goes. If you start out 2-1, with a road win at Oregon State, you have to feel as a fan pretty good about where Purdue is going into the conference season.
Now, Sam, will you be at the Purdue game in Corvallis against Oregon State?
I will not, because my wife is pregnant and
nice.
having a child somewhere in that 2-week window. If things go the way they're supposed to. And
what number child is this?
This is my first, and her first.
Well, Jimmy. Now wait a minute. So I'm looking right now. That game is scheduled. What's the date of that game?
September 21st.
September 21st. So Jimmy, that's you're already going to have tips for him by then, right?
27th for me. So he might have tips for
Look
me.
At the two of you. What are the odds that both of you have children on the same day?
September 24th could be a wonderful day.
That's Eddie's birthday, right in the middle of the two.
Congrats, Sam. That's awesome.
Very cool. I was going to tell you, or whoever is going in your place to cover that game against Oregon State, just so you know, I mentioned on the air before, they play a very loud chainsaw noise in that stadium every third down in Oregon State, and they do it a lot, and don't be alarmed by it because it's a little bit – it has a little bit – when you go to haunted houses, for whatever reason, they always got guys running around with fake chainsaws. It sounds like that. Just don't be alarmed by it.
Well, the most fun thing is going and seeing some of these traditions around the country. And last year, honestly, I looked forward to going to Virginia Tech for the Enter Sandman entrance. And then I was really kind of underwhelmed by it, but it also was fun and everything else. So I was like, maybe the environment just wasn't right for it.
Listen.
Area and everything else.
Sam, you got to go to Clemson for a night game and watch them run the hill. That's all I'll say, man. After that, you'll be good. Everything else after that is a step down anyway. So there you go. And I'm biased, but that's the best tradition in sports. Again, Sam King joining us. You can read all of his work. I always get confused, Sam. It's the Lafayette Journal and Courier or Courier and Journal?
Journal and Courier. And then a lot of people get confused because the Louisville Courier Journal was the same company. So, you're not the first person to mix those two.
So you're non-alphabetical order. Journal and Courier, not Courier and Journal, right?
Correct.
Okay, Lafayette Journal and Courier. But that's where you can read Sam's work. And he joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line. Sam, we appreciate it. Get some rest, I guess, before late September, but we will talk to you soon, all right?
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it. Now, Jimmy, did you know that you guys are going to be first-time fathers at the same time?
Did not know that, no. So that makes we throw Sam King
You're the 27th?
Yeah. We throw Sam King in the same boat as Alex Golden as well.
So my friend Mike Hillary's mom, Sue Hillary's birthday is September 27th. Should we do I guess years from now, a little joint party? You guys
Absolutely.
can go to showbiz together?
Yeah.
It's now Chuck E. Cheese, I realize. Your birthday's the 24th, Eddie?
Yes.
So typically, do you find yourself actually celebrating the 3-week anniversary of my birthday when you're celebrating yours?
No, it's celebrating the half birthday of my father. That's how I think of it.
Oh, your dad's March 24th?
Yep.
I always enjoy half birthdays. Stephanie McComb's birthday, or half birthday, her birthday is my half birthday, which means vice versa.
And then executive producer Todd Meyer's birthday is the 23rd.
If you really do the math on September birthdays, it makes pretty good sense, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's some website where you can pull up and look at the estimated date
of conception
that you were created.
Yep.
And I looked at it, and it gave the exact date of my parents' wedding anniversary, and I didn't eat for like 3 days. I'm like, I'm still kind of holding out hope I'm adopted. I'm not going to lie to you. Not going to lie to you. Yeah, that I had so much in common with the band that were giving away tickets, right? I mean, I'm Mr. Know-It-All, and I very seldomly compromise, right? I mean, why would I? Right?
New ringtone for you?
It should be. I don't know if you know this or not, Jimmy, but I love me some me. I tell people all the time.
It's been occasionally documented on this show.
My email address is my two favorite people, jakequery@me.com. And the me.com, now, Jimmy, you're hip with the tech lingo. At some point, I had to give my email address to somebody, and I will readily admit, I still have, now, I've been mocked for this. I still have a Hotmail email account. Now, here's my question. Why is that funny? Why do people think it's funny?
Because it's an older email address that it'd be like having an AOL.com email is still your email.
Which, by the way, there is a very, very, very prominent athlete.
There are people that still have them. I know.
But here's my question.
It's from the first half century of your life, Jake.
But this is what I don't understand as an older person.
And Hotmail became Yahoo took them over, so now it's Yahoo emails generally.
But like, who cares? Because it's email. I mean, is there like am I missing like a fancy delivery truck that's supposed to bring my email to me?
I think it all gets there the same.
It's all the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So the only reason I still have a Hotmail account is because in the first generation of email, when email was first becoming a thing, that was the email that I used. And so it's just my name, right? jakequery@hotmail.com. Well,
I'm impressed you still have access to it, to be honest with you. Most people, they wind up getting locked out when they have an email address for that long.
Here's the thing. For so long, I mean, probably the first 10 or 15 years of my career, that was the email address that was used for the Speedway or for race teams to send like their press kits or the Colts or whatever else. That was the email that was linked to me. So there are so many places where I get email into that there just was no sense in ever changing it because, instead, I don't want to be that guy that's like, I have a new email address. And I realize now we have a station email address. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I'm talking about personal emails. Now, when I got an iPhone, maybe this was like a 6-week experiment. I have no idea. But part of getting an iCloud account was I got an email at me.com. And I told somebody once, I'm like, yeah, my email is, because I wanted to be more fashionable and modern.
There you go.
And so when I told him my email was jakequery@me.com, somebody's like, what? What antiquated third world are you coming from? And I'm like, it's an Apple email. Is that not cool? I don't know. It's got to be cooler than Hotmail. But am I the only person that has the me.com? Are you familiar with that?
I've heard of it, but I think mine's just at iCloud.
Yeah, which is the same. I mean, I would assume the same thing, but I have no idea why. Maybe it was just a brief period they went through. I think when I finally got an iPhone, I was late to the party on the iPhone, but I'm going to say like 2014 probably.
Okay.
And that was what was provided to me. But apparently the Hotmail thing is people laugh at it, and I'm like, to me it just means that I've been around the block for a while.
I don't laugh at it in the sense of looking down. I just think it's because it's unique. You don't hear it. Usually it's Gmail or iCloud or Yahoo. You don't hear Hotmail.
I know someone who has Rocket Mail.
Now that's Rocket Mail's like an app though, right? Or is that?
I'm not sure. My
Somebody
parents still have SBC Global.
That's what I was going to say. That's the one that makes me chuckle as well because you don't hear SBC Global anymore. SBCglobal.net was the other email address that you would find every
Somebody
now
else
and again.
just said they're rocking a yahoo.com account. Yeah, I mean, I to me, it's like it just means you've had. I mean, it's no different than just means you've had it forever.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of view Yahoo and Gmail in the same breath.
Caller number 4 at 239-1070, by the way.
Okay, so Eddie, tell me exactly what it is that we're giving away.
I think it's pronounced Primus. It's either Primus or Primus. I don't know which.
It's Primus, yeah.
Okay. Tickets to go see Primus with Coheed and Cambria at the Everwise Amphitheater at White River State Park. That is on August 1st.
Okay, so August 1st, White River State Park. Primus is the headliner there. And we're going to do just straight giveaway for caller number 4?
Yes.
And the phone number in which people should call for that is?
317-239-1070.
317-239-1070. The phone lines are jam-packed. How about that? Can we just play a little get to know your listener with our winner here real quick?
No.
Why not?
Because
why? Go ahead and put them on. I'd like to say hi to them.
I'm sorry we can't.
Punch one through.
I'm sorry we cannot.
I have the ability to do it myself if I want to.
Yeah, you can try. It just won't go over the air.
You just turn the fader down.
That's true. So you're not going to allow for the host of the show to talk to somebody who is calling in that listens to the show to let them know that they've won tickets?
They can do that at 2:30 for the Indiana State Fair tickets.
Okay, Zach Osterman or Osterman is next. Speaking of down in Georgia, it is the home state of our next guest who joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line, because we're all about fair and balance here in Query and Company. For example, the Colts are reporting today to training camp. We're going to talk a lot about that and have over the course of the show, but also Andrew Nimhard agrees to an extension today. So the first segment of the show, we did like 50-50, Pacers-Colts, fair and balanced. Now, Big Ten Media Day happens, and we talked Purdue just a second ago. Now we're going to talk Indiana, and we're going to do so by beginning with this. Our friend Zach Osterman from the Indianapolis Star joins us. And Zach, your colleague, Dustin, do we have that, Eddie?
Dopirak.
Thank you, Dustin Dopirak. It's a mental hurdle for me on pronouncing his last name, and my last name is Query, so I'm very sympathetic to this. And so I want to do it the right way, and I want to not disrespect your family name. So can we record you saying it properly so that I can get it out of the mental hurdle, and then we'll do the same thing? Can we do that real quick?
Of course.
Okay. Go ahead. I will say your first name, and then you go ahead and as you would introduce yourself at a cocktail party, you say the last one. Joining us now from the Indianapolis Star is Zach
Osterman.
Did you get that, Eddie? Did you capture it? All right. We are good to go. Zach Osterman joins us. Okay, Zach, let's begin with Media Days. Your takeaway from I guess Curt Cignetti's first go-round here with Big Ten Media Day representing Indiana football. Anything that jumped out at you as new information or a surprise?
Well, let's just to, I guess, be fair. Cignetti doesn't go until tomorrow, but I think what's been obviously interesting, and we saw this with SEC Media Days, I wasn't there in person, but you follow along a lot on social media. What has been interesting is to watch the SEC and the Big Ten go through this Media Days process when A, obviously we're bringing a bunch of new schools into these conferences. B, these conferences have kind of separated themselves now even from, the ACC spent a lot of time talking about answering questions. Is Florida State going to leave? Is Clemson going to leave? You don't have any of that concern with the Big Ten, with the SEC. The Big 12 spent a lot of time, sort of frankly, and I don't say this pejoratively, but sort of seeming like they were punching up, talking, a big game about constantly trying to innovate and expand and different things. The Big Ten and the SEC, on one hand, get to sort of be a little bit more calm, a little bit more, hey, we've got, we have the cards in our hands. We have the power, we have the influence, we have the money. On the other hand, not to torture the cliche, but, when you are at the top of the mountain, that means it's your job to stay there. You're the one everybody's looking to set the example. You're the one everybody's chasing. And so when you kind of hear, the SEC talking about, I think both Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey, kind of tried to hammer this idea that they're comfortable where their conferences are at the moment. Of course, we've literally heard commissioners say we're comfortable where we are, and then weeks later they expand again. But it's just it does feel like for the moment things are settling just a bit around college athletics, and in particular, obviously, so much of this is driven by college football. And now, where once we had a Power 5, and then we kind of called it a Power 4, I think really we have two at the top in the SEC and the Big Ten. And it's going to be those two upon which it's kind of incumbent to set a lot of the course of what comes next, because they are the ones with the most money and the most reach and the most influence. And you want those things, obviously, as a conference. But the flip side is that carries a certain responsibility and it carries a certain pressure. And it's interesting to just kind of watch the Big Ten sort of navigate its way through the early days of, trying to be this conference that is truly national and is trying to basically position itself as, 1A in all of college sports.
Zach Osterman is our guest. He covers all things IU for the Indy Star. He joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Zach, depending on the amount of time that we go with you today, I'll have varying questions around this same idea, which is the transfer portal and how it's going to impact IU with how heavy they went for Curt Cignetti. I'll go with a specific one, though, off the bat. Curtis Rourke, the transfer from Ohio, is viewed by many, I think you've mentioned this as well in your pieces in the lead up to this season, as a fringe level pro prospect potentially that could fit just about anywhere that was looking for a quarterback in the portal. How does his time in the MAC and what he was able to do there at Ohio translate to what's going to be asked of him in the Big Ten, albeit in a relatively easy schedule compared to most opposition in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I mean, listen, first of all, while Curt Cignetti has said, and I'm sure it's going to continue to say, nothing's given, everything's got to be earned, you would be surprised if we're not talking about Curtis Rourke as the front runner, so long as he's healthy, and you only say that just because he had the ACL tear a couple of years ago. But, I mean, when you talk about, especially from a head coach who, more than once has said to us that when he goes into the portal in particular, he looks for production over potential. That's not to say he'll never take a guy that maybe didn't get a lot of playing time, I don't know, at Alabama or Texas or something. But you can see with what Cignetti's done in the portal already at Indiana, he places a lot of value on guys that, even if it's at a lower level, have put it on film. And if you go back and look at what he did at James Madison, and I haven't, sort of dove into every single transfer he took there, but you can see some high-profile examples of the same thing, that he really does value a player like Rourke, who at very least had nothing else to prove at the MAC level. Will it step up to the Big Ten level? We're going to find out in all likelihood. But he was MAC Offensive Player of the Year in 2022. He tore his ACL that season. Basically the very end of that season, spent the entire offseason rehabbing, and then came back in 2023 and still led Ohio to another bowl game. I think they won 10 or 11 games all in. He was QB1 during spring practice, or at least during the spring game that we saw, and that was pretty consistent. Indiana didn't rotate its number one, or the quarterback with its number one offense. It was always Rourke. So I think that it's fair to expect Rourke to kind of be in the pole position to start against FIU week one. I think that's why Indiana, you bring a player of those credentials and that caliber. And again, what I come back to is, you never know for certain how somebody's skills are going to translate, how much harder they're going to find Big Ten than a Group of Five conference, et cetera. But at very least, Curtis Rourke had nothing left to prove where he was. And so, Indiana's kind of given him the opportunity to step up and say, I can do it at this level as well. And as you say, maybe a fringe NFL prospect, his brother is already there. So it's not like he kind of doesn't have the exposure to that level of the sport as well. He is going to be, it goes without saying, pivotal for Indiana this season. Quarterback play has just been so up and down the last couple of years, and a lot of that's been down to injury, so Indiana's got to keep him healthy too. But, you're getting a player that at minimum just kind of – it's clear that he has earned the opportunity to try and prove that he can do in the Big Ten what he was doing in the MAC, and we'll see if he can do it in Indiana.
Our guest on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line is Zach
Osterman
of the Indianapolis Star. Zach, did I read that they're doing something with the Rock? That like the stadium's no longer the Rock, or they moved the Rock, or they took the big Rock and it's now outside, or it's on 17th at Dave's Convenient Mart? Like, what's going on with the Rock?
They put it out in front of the south end zone entrance. So basically there was kind of nothing out there, obviously, in the north. The north end zone entrance a few years ago is where they put the George Taliaferro statue. And so there's kind of this, this landmark, if you will, to sort of welcome people into that. If you're going into the north end zone, if that's where your tickets are taking you or whatever. The south end zone is obviously a little bit newer, and they have kind of a big landscaped area out there, but they hadn't really, there was nothing kind of to mark it out. I think just like some columns and things. So they took the Rock and they moved it out there. The idea, I think, being, again, sort of like the north end zone has the George Taliaferro statue. Now the south end zone has Hep's Rock, and the idea is it's a landmark. It's a place to take pictures. It's just kind of bringing, I think, from Indiana's perspective anyway, it's sort of bringing a sort of personal touch from inside the stadium, outside the stadium, to, it's worth saying, a part of the stadium that only recently, if we're talking in the big picture terms, that south end zone facility opened in, I think, 2018. So it's only recent that, like, that's a point of ingress into the stadium. Before, that was where the scoreboard was. There were fences there. Indiana had tall, like, juniper trees, I think, to prevent people from just standing there and watching the game from behind the fence for free.
No, wait.
So,
now, who in the hell would do that?
Yeah, I mean, not that anyone ever
just stand around watch them play. I mean, come on.
Not that anyone ever did that, but the point is, I think it was kind of this idea of, after a few years of kind of establishing this fan behavior of, hey, you can not just tailgate around the south end zone, but you can enter through the south end zone. That's where your tickets can be. That's your sort of point of entry to the stadium. Now there's kind of a landmark that, people can sort of, I don't know what the word would be, kind of navigate around, that is recognizable, that obviously has been with the program now for, you think about it, almost 20 years or right around 20 years.
When you look at their their schedule, Zach, I think their schedule is kind of – thank you. I think their schedule is kind of favorable. Am I being too bullish and optimistic?
No, not at all. I've said this to people all summer. Like, there comes a point when you look at it enough as a reporter when you're planning travel and you're, writing different pieces about predicting results or whatever. There comes a point where the schedule, like you can just repeat it back if somebody says, what's Indiana's schedule this year? I think I earned it. I think I memorized it earlier this year just organically than I ever have in the past. And the reason is because it feels like such a big talking point around this team and this season. And some of that is, listen, it's all on paper right now, but some of that is the undeniable momentum that Curt Cignetti has created since he was hired, some of the wins he's had in the transfer portal, the swiftness and decisiveness with which he pulled together a staff that seems to be pretty well thought of, some of the promising stuff that we saw out of Indiana in the spring, some of the, the high school recruiting success Indiana's had, the undeniable NIL fundraising success that Cignetti's arrival has kind of helped generate. So you've got this momentum going into a schedule where, Indiana bought out of the Louisville series and was not afraid to say, we're getting out of games like this because in an 18-team Big Ten that stretches from New Jersey to Los Angeles, we just can't afford to not be going 3-0 in the non-conference basically as often as we can, because the road through the conference is going to be hard enough. We just have to give ourselves those opportunities in the non-conference to pick up some easy wins, or at least that, coaches will say nothing's easy, but, manageable wins, manageable games that give us a platform to get into the Big Ten and maybe compete. You've got 8 home games. Like I said, I can literally recite the whole schedule to you. You don't play USC. You don't play Oregon. You don't play Penn State. You don't play Wisconsin or Minnesota, who have been kind of the two, if you want to think about the old Big Ten West, the two, kind of most consistent kind of, competitive programs over there the last, 7-8 years. You don't play Michigan or Ohio State until November. So you don't have a run, which you saw from Indiana. Indiana saw at times when it had to play in the Old East, where maybe Indiana would get a 4-0 start, but then it would play, Ohio State, at Penn State, at Michigan State, Nebraska, at Michigan, something like that. And so it's sort of like, well, you start 4-0 and then you hit this meat grinder. That's not necessarily there. And then when you even look at the teams that Indiana's playing, they open Big Ten play at UCLA, new head coach. Their first home Big Ten game is Maryland, which is going to have a lot to figure out without Talia Tagovailoa, who's obviously matriculated on. Nebraska's kind of in a similar boat to Indiana from a sort of a season complexion perspective. Northwestern's going to be playing in a weird pop-up stadium. Washington and Michigan State both have first-year head coaches as well. It just like it nothing's guaranteed, but I don't think anybody who looks at this schedule would be out of line to say, if Indiana is as good as it seems like maybe Curt Cignetti's gotten them to be, particularly on offense, and if they can go 3-0 in the non-conference, and maybe grab a couple early conference wins, get some wind in their sails, it's not hard to imagine this being a successful season for Indiana under Curt Cignetti in year one, because you have all the home games, because you don't play any of the perceived heavy hitters. You don't play a lot of them at all, and you don't play kind of the two really big traditional ones until weeks 10 and 11, Michigan at home and Ohio State on the road. It is a navigable schedule if Indiana is as improved from last season as I think a lot of people hope it is, given Curt Cignetti's offseason work.
Zach, I realize, admittedly, this question feels odd, and it especially feels odd because we wouldn't ordinarily talk about IU football in this regard, but because of the way that Curt Cignetti has propped the program up without having coached an actual snap of football yet for IU, because of the expectations that he is purporting that they are going to hit the ground running and this is going to be a different team. Tell me if this is a silly question, but because of how advantageous the schedule is, and because of the thought that they could, let's just say for the sake of argument, everything you outlined plays out as we expected. They go to a bowl this coming year. They win. Everybody's going to be happy about the bowl. IU fans would lose their minds for the idea of winning a bowl game. No one's going to be mad about that. And I know this is somewhat loser mentality, but you mentioned who's on the schedule next year and the year after that. Do we all of a sudden have kind of a fool's gold thing like we did in 2020 during the COVID season where they're winning all these games, they have a great record on their hand, and now expectations have reached a point where I don't know if they'll ever knock on that door again in year 2 and year 3. Am I being totally naive, or is there a setup of, hey, it's great, the schedule's where it is, but man, they go doors ablazing out of the gate, maybe the bar gets set too high?
I just think in modern college football, and this isn't specific to Indiana, I just think you almost can't think that far ahead anymore.
Okay.
And, you think about 19 and 20, and obviously those were very good seasons for Indiana. And I know the COVID season comes with all kinds of mitigating factors and riders attached and whatever. But, I mean, it is also probably fair to say that the big sort of ground shift that comes from 2020 to 2021 and certainly into 2022 in all of college athletics, which is the impact of name, image, and likeness on player movement and, talent concentration. Indiana probably didn't. I don't think it is unfair to say Indiana was not able to navigate that well enough on the football side. And that's everybody involved up to and including coaches, administration, whoever. Those early days of NIL were absolute chaos, and you can fault anybody who maybe just kind of didn't understand quite how to thread that needle. But my point is, I think we have just gotten to a place, as much as this has settled out, and there's a lot that hasn't, but as much as this has settled out, I think we've almost gotten to a place where you have to think about a college football program a little bit more like an NFL franchise. And I don't mean that from the perspective of paying players so much as I mean that from the perspective of roster turnover.
Totally.
And I mean that in terms of saying, you can't sit here and say, well, what happens if Indiana wins 7 games this year, goes to the Music City Bowl, which, by the way, Christmas in Nashville is every beat writer's dream, or at least this beat writer's dream. I don't know. Other people can have others if they want, but wins the Music City Bowl. It's the first bowl win in 33 years. Maybe they beat Purdue or Michigan State. They get a trophy, whatever. I don't think you can sit here and say, okay, well, now you have to be careful that expectations don't get too far ahead of themselves because everything turns over so fast, and you have to turn around and re-recruit your roster immediately. You're obviously going to have to deal with coaches moving on. That's always been a piece of this, and I think it's only become more so in the last few years. I just think that ultimately you can have some, again, like, for example, when we've talked with Curt Cignetti about roster building, he says his kind of ideal annually is about 15 to 20 high school players and 10 to 15 portal players. And then you sort of fill in around any additional needs that pop up with what you can. The idea being you always want some room for portal guys, but you'd like there to be sort of a foundation of players in your program that you develop for 2, 3, 4 years. But I think that with, Jake called it free agency, and in some ways it resembles that. I think with freedom of movement, with NIL, now we're about to introduce a roster sharing element to this. We're about to change scholarship limits when the House settlement comes through, assuming it comes through. Ross Dellinger, I think, was from Yahoo, was reporting this earlier today, that the final number that everyone seems to have settled on is 105 scholarships for football, which can be fully funded. So now suddenly everybody's going to have 20 more scholarships, and you can bet that Big Ten schools are going to be the first ones to fully fund all their football scholarships because they're the ones with the most money. They're the ones with the most expectations. They're the ones with the most ambitions. I think you just have to – you can have some long-term plans, but you really just have to think so much year to year right now and just sort of saying, you can't sit here and worry about, what does this mean to what might happen in 2027 because your job is so focused on just taking it, basically just dealing with whatever's right in front of you. And I don't know if that's great. I think that there's ways in which probably college football could stand for some of that to settle down a little bit. But I do think it operates a lot more like the pro model anymore, where obviously pro rosters don't turn over completely every year, but there is a lot of movement, and you don't necessarily sit here and say, other than with rookies that are on controllable contracts and have options and different things like that, you often don't have a lot of guys on your roster that you sit here and say, okay, well, he solved the problem for the next 6 years. I mean, like, use the Falcons as an example. I know they got trashed for taking Michael Penix in the first round, and that may not work out, but like, they spend all this money on Kirk Cousins for a 4-year contract and almost immediately give themselves a path to moving on from Kirk Cousins after basically 2 years. That is not that crazy in the NFL, and I would argue that it's becoming more that way in college, just kind of obviously via a different mechanism, because it's not salaries, at least not yet. It's NIL, but it's kind of the same rhythm.
Hey, Zach, who's your English Premier League soccer team of choice? I know you use the fancy lingo and stuff on the X Twitter, and so I know you're a diehard. Which team is it that which club do you support? Which side do you go with?
Liverpool.
Okay, now that's the one that so long as you're a fan of Liverpool, you never cheer alone. Is that right? Isn't that their slogan?
You never walk alone. It's the song from Carousel.
Never walk alone. Okay. So at one point I decided that I needed to pick a team, and Shannon and I were sitting inside of Chatham Tap and looking at all the flags, and I think we selected Liverpool. And then I determined that if you never walk alone, then that means that you're on a bandwagon. And so then I was surprised that Jimmy doesn't root for them. But I decided that I need a team.
I root for the other bad team that's also a bandwagon team. What are you going to do?
That's right. Now, Liverpool, aren't they across the street from Everton? Is that right?
For the moment, yes. They're about a little less than a mile across Stanley Park from one another. Everton's building a new stadium. Next year will be Everton's last year.
I knew they needed new luxury box suites, I'm sure. Okay, so I decided that I've got a team here. Now, Nottingham Forest is somewhat intriguing to me because there's a neighborhood at 91st and College, or Westfield by that name, and I thought that was cool. But then as I'm looking it over, I've decided that I'm now going to be the side that I support is Ipswich Town. Household name, rolls right off the tongue. They play each other. I'm looking right here. I believe their first match, and I'm not sure on which pitch they're playing, but they play on January 25th. Do you want to get together and go somewhere and drink beer and watch that game and talk trash to each other?
Ipswich Forest or Liverpool?
I'm sorry.
Ipswich, Liverpool.
Now, Zach, I'm going to need you to use the proper terminology. It's Ipswich Town and Nottingham Forest. But Ipswich Town is who I'm going with, and they're playing Liverpool on August. Now, I'm looking here. Their first match is on August 17th, Saturday, August 17th. Do you want to get together and throw down pints and watch it?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think boyhood Ipswich fan Ed Sheeran would tell you that it's okay to just call them Ipswich.
Okay, so I can just call them Ipswich. Are you sure? They're new to they just worked their way up into the big league, right?
Yeah, they actually got successive promotions. So they were down in League One, which is the third tier of the football pyramid, and they got promoted out of League One 2 seasons ago, and then they were immediately promoted again.
Can I keep calling it Ipswich Town just to be different? Because
you can call them the Tractor Boys too if you want. That's their colloquial name.
That kickoff is 7:30 in the morning.
I just know this.
So you're aware of that.
I just know this. So long as you have the proper terminology, you never talk alone. I know that much. But Ipswich. So Ipswich, the Tractor Boys, is that right? I don't know that I'm down with Tractor Boys. Do I need to get a tractor to watch them?
Yeah, I forget exactly why that is their nom de guerre, but it is they're considered the Tractor Boys. Ipswich is a smaller town on the eastern coast.
Jerry Seinfeld had a girlfriend that got herpes from a tractor. I'm not sure that I want to be the Tractor Boys, but that's cool. I'll see what I can do with it. I like their logo, and it looks like that they play for IPS. And, I'm down with Tech and Howe and Shortridge and all of them, so I'm cool with it. All right, Zach, we appreciate the time. August 17th, we'll be drinking harps together and watching it.
Sounds good.
Maybe Smittix. I might have a Smittix. I do like Smittix. Boddingtons, we can have one of those if
you're gonna have to go to one of the
if Eddie's
soccer bars. Like,
well, we got to ask Eddie's lone friend.
That's right.
That imports it and sets it all up and drives around town distributing it. Right.
That was who, by the way?
What's that?
That was who on the what line?
That was Zach, by the way.
Osterman.
Thank you, on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line. I'm all in on Ipswich. Now he tells me that I can just go with Ipswich instead of Ipswich Town, but I want to be official. Ipswich Town. I'm all in.
High T.
Yeah, that's right. IT. Now that I'm not very good at. Let me tell you something. If your team is IT, that means that it's usually running slow and actually needs to reboot itself like twice a week, right?
Oh, I thought you were saying your team was it.
It's that too, right? But I just like the IPS. Okay, Colts in the news. They are reporting in Westfield. George Bremer going to join us top of the hour to talk about that. But there is one player, I'm not going to say necessarily that it's a controversy brewing, but it might be just a little splash of instant coffee. We'll explain next. This time a year ago, and I don't know, Jimmy, refresh my memory here.
Shout out to Eddie for the Kendrick Lamar there on the rejoiner, by the
I
way.
feel like this time a year ago, we were not yet talking about Jonathan Taylor because it wasn't. I mean, there was percolation that he wanted an extension or so, or that he had asked for the trade just before camp, right?
Yeah.
Or was it after the meeting in the Magic Bus?
The yacht bus. I can't. It's all a blur to this point that I'm going to cross details, but I know definitively the thoughts were talks had gone south after the appearance on the yacht bus, that things were not in a good place. Whether or not trade demands were already mentioned at that point, I can't remember off top.
Now, by the way, we still have tickets to give away later in the show for the Indiana State Fair, if I'm not mistaken, from Eddie Garrison.
Yes. You can play Get to Know Your Listener then.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the permission. Do I need to have my mom sign a permission slip for that, or
no, not today.
do you need to tape it to my shirt?
Not today.
I hopped in the Wayback Machine. After a conversation in his owner's bus, Jonathan Taylor is looking to motor out of Indy. So he requested the trade following the meeting with owner Jim Irsay. This from NFL.com.
Well, I know, but but what I'm saying, so that was
It was after the meeting.
okay.
So it would have been, but he wouldn't have asked for it until after training camp started.
I can't recall if we knew going into camp that there was going to have to be a meeting taking place between them, or was it them where all of a sudden we were like, "Whoa, wait a minute, Jonathan Taylor's unhappy."
That one I will go on record and say we did know there was going to be some bubbling. Whether or not a trade request would be mentioned, we didn't. But the thought was, here is a guy that's because the Saquon stuff was going on at the same time, and we knew that Taylor was a year out from the tag, so he was going to have to play regardless. But he took this new philosophy on of, I'm going to try to fight for the money before the tag can even be placed on me and see how that goes. And
Okay, now
didn't.
So that was the big talking point, which means we've got to be coming up pretty close to the 1-year anniversary of this program, right?
Yes, we're knocking on the door. We're still, I think, about a month away, but we're knocking on the door.
Would you like the exact date?
Look at Eddie. Eddie
Even tattooed on.
Eddie's
don't you?
looking at the ankle tattoo that he has, yes. What is the exact date there, Eddie?
It would be August 21st.
Okay.
Wow.
So we're coming up. We'll have a big – should we do a party for that, a celebration?
Yeah, it'd be celebrating the eve of Olivia's birthday.
Okay. Listen, when you work in radio long enough and you've had the career I've had, you celebrate each year that you can change on the resume, and you're like, it makes it look like I was there a year longer, right?
What's
That's
your
right.
rule about, is it just right when the anniversary happens you can change?
Well, you just go with the calendar year. So
Sure.
January 1st, you're like, sweet. I mean,
If you get let go in February, you're putting all of 2025.
on the resume, it just says,
Yeah.
I worked there from
Yep.
blank to blank. Let's go, right?
Right.
So, but this year, going into camp, there was not a lot of discussion about literally the storyline for the Colts of 2024 was kumbaya. Everybody's happy. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's ready to go. Even like they went out and they drafted a guy to help out Kwity Paye, takes the pressure off of him. I mean, everything came with a positive spin. Anthony Richardson, Chris Ballard said today, the training wheels are off. There is no scar tissue. It is let's go. He has no restrictions. The shoulder's perfect. I mean, the biceps pristine. The surgery was pristine and perfect. That's what we heard about Andrew Luck, and then we found out there's scar tissue. Now with Anthony Richardson, everything's perfect. And everything was good to go except for this. And here's the yin and the yang of it. The yin, and I don't know in yin and yang which is good and which is bad, but once the good side of this is it is a player that I don't think controversies would spin from. The bad is it's a player that presumably is at a contract disagreement with the Colts. And let me explain what I'm talking about. Ryan Kelly has been a really good player and a very good soldier for the Colts. Ryan Kelly is a really good guy, by all account. We don't know these guys personally, but in the interactions that we've had or fans had or whatever else, he strikes you as the kind of guy that is everything you'd want in a professional and a coworker and a teammate, etc. He's done and said and gone about all the right things. He had obviously a terrible personal tragedy and was courageously public about it when his wife, when they were expecting their child and the baby passed, terribly sad, and he took time away from the team, understandable. And then when he came back, I think consistency was a challenge, and he last year told Kevin and I when we were out at camp that, in fact, it was as difficult, if maybe not even more so, than we realized, and he had lost a lot of weight, and he was playing underweight, and he really struggled. I think he physically struggled. I think he mentally struggled. And then last year he had a good year, did Ryan Kelly. But for whatever reason, and I don't, I'd have to go back and really look at the notes year by year by year. Kevin would maybe know better than I, but Ryan Kelly's name has been attached to possible attrition for 2 or 3 years now, even before that terrible personal tragedy happened. And again, I want to be very clear. He was entitled to as much time physically and psychologically to come back from that as he needed. And he is entitled to, if that's motivation for him, to rechannel the focus of his life. Absolutely. Again, by all account, everything you'd want in your locker room, Ryan Kelly. But for whatever reason, it just feels like his name for a couple of years running has been one that when you looked at their roster and you looked at the future of the roster, you said, okay, who are players that are definitely going to be here? And Ryan Kelly, for whatever reason, was always one of those names where you said to yourself, well, but I don't know. I mean, is Ryan Kelly going to come back next year? Is he going to play next year? And maybe that's unfair of us, but through the injury histories and the just at times this insinuation, or maybe it's just our own vicarious assumption, because we look at it and we say, if I went through a really hard time and I was over the age of 30 and I'd already made several $1 million and I was at a position that is physical and whatever else, maybe I'd start thinking about it walking away. So we had this assumption. I think the Colts looked at Ryan Kelly, and you have to do this with every player. Andrew Nembhard today got an extension with the Pacers, or agreed to one with the Pacers moving forward. And as I said in talking about Andrew Nembhard, oftentimes with players, you look at it and you look at the contract that you're giving them and you try to figure out, okay, are we paying them for what they've done or what we think they have yet to do? And in Ryan Kelly's case, if you were to give him an extension at this point, I think you would actually be paying him for what he's been as opposed to what you anticipate him being moving forward. And then you look at the fact that they drafted in the 4th round a player from Wisconsin that they have already said they're going to slot and start grooming at the center position in Bortolini. So does that mean that they've already turned the page? Well, apparently, and I think this is surprising to a lot of people, Ryan Kelly apparently opened the line of conversation, or did his representation, with the Colts about extending beyond when his contract is up. But the one news nugget from today that's probably the most relevant is the fact that Ryan Kelly found out that sentiment may not be reciprocated.
Yeah, from what from our standpoint, is the Colts have basically made it pretty clear that they don't want to do an early extension. So, is what it is.
Is that a guy just playing the chess piece? Or is that a guy that has been told definitively, we are moving on? But he does not strike me as the type, Jimmy, that would turn that into a public feud that becomes a distraction.
And you don't often see linemen do that kind of thing, right? Like, that's always the stereotype of the non-sexy positions of football. They are never the type that are going to make it about me, me, me. It's always going to be about team, team, team. I agree with you in that regard. I don't think that Ryan Kelly's going to make this into a big thing.
He's entering the final year of his deal, by the way, 11.4 this year.
It is not uncommon, and it all depends on skill set and value that, is overanalyzed ad nauseum, but it's not uncommon to see high production still from linemen, especially centers, in their mid-30s. I'm not saying that he should get his next contract, whether it's in Indy or whether it is somewhere else, like a 5-year deal by any means, but if it's a 2 to 3 year contract, if he wants one more contract in his NFL playing days, I think he has every right to go after that one, but more focused on the Colts in this debate of, have they told him flatly, we're not interested in an extension? Well, if one of the concerns, Jake, was, I don't know if he's got both feet in, going public and putting yourself out there like that, sharing that information like that, when generally you're not a me guy. I don't think you do that unless you're somebody that sees yourself playing football for a couple more seasons. Now, maybe the Colts have moved on, but I'm moving towards the lane of I don't think Ryan Kelly's ready to hang up the cleats if he's publicly engaging in conversation about his contract status and his future in the NFL. I mean, you've talked about different pieces of this offensive line over the last 5 to 7 years of all the way back to Costanzo of full commitment and not having early retirement on your hands. Doesn't that sound like, regardless of what the Colts do, the tone of a player that is clearly still interested in playing a couple more seasons?
Yeah, and I think that might have actually kind of caught him by surprise. You know what I mean? In terms of, again, it's kind of unfair, but there's just been this stereotype almost that Ryan Kelly each year was sitting down with his family and evaluating whether he wanted to come back for another year. I have nothing. I can't be the only one that like has in my mind that's been that about him. And obviously the Colts would know better than I. Now, the other news in terms of the roster today, Eddie, one player is starting out on the always, or is it two for the PUP list?
I believe it was just one in Chris Lamont's. Tyler Goodson is dealing with a toe. I think he had toe surgery. It's to be determined from Chris Ballard during his media availability today if he will be on the PUP list or not.
Now, Juju Brents has an ankle injury that should be cleared in a few days. I'm always curious of this.
He had a cleanup procedure during the offseason.
I've always wondered this. So how do you time it where you're like, I'm going to have an ankle cleanup procedure and then I'll be cleared a few days into camp? Wouldn't they just have done the procedure a few days earlier? You know what I'm saying?
You would think logistically it'd be like, wait a minute. Recovery time. Camp's already going to be started.
Right.
We should move this up a little bit.
Juju Brents, though, should be cleared in a few days. Braden Smith, who, obviously over the course of a year, Braden Smith, the right tackle, is consistently, seems each and every, and a really good player, don't get me wrong, but each and every week, it seems like we're evaluating whether or not he's going to be able to go. Is expected to be active coming off of obviously a knee that plagued him over the course of last year. But Braden Smith, a very important player for them. But they look ready to go because they seem healthy. Michael Pittman Jr. was a big talking point in terms of contract extension. Would they tag him? Would they not? Now he's in the mix. He's got the new deal. He is clearly the number one receiver. We'll see what happens with A.D. Mitchell and Alec Pierce and Josh Downs and those that are working underneath them. But he was on the wake-up call this morning with Kevin Bowen and Andy Sweeney, and Michael Pittman talked about his goals for the season now that he is locked in with a big payday.
Yeah, so I have a lot of goals. Like, I actually haven't narrowed them in yet because, like, it takes me a while, like almost like a couple months to really narrow in and, like, lock in on them because I set goals. So I set my overall goal. Like, it almost works like a big pyramid. So, like, my number one goal, like, what is that? And that is Super Bowl win, right? And then under that I have 3 goals, and then under that I have my targets that are my like weekly to monthly targets, like, hey, like I have to be doing this. And then I have my daily targets that, hey, I have to catch 300 balls this day, I have to catch, or I got to run this many routes, I got to do this, I got to watch this much film, and those are my daily targets. And that's how I keep on track is like I can like look back by, hey, I did this and that, but I forgot this, like I need to get back on it. And it kind of just keeps you like on a straight line.
Does that touchdown number, when you think about that big number, where's that on the goal list for this season?
So that one is 10 plus. So that's one thing that we're really focused in on this year is scoring more.
Okay, 10 plus. Now, first off, that a lot of that wore me out. I found that confusing. I get it, and I'm not making fun of him. I'm saying, like, man, that's a lot of goals there, right? I like the fact that his first one was a team goal. That's good. And I like Michael Pittman. I think he is not only a likable personality, but I think that he has played at a level that probably exceeds even what people give him credit for, because there was that question mark of, is he a number one or is he actually just a number two? But let's look at his touchdown totals when he says that this year he would like to get 10 touchdowns through the air. Now, I would assume, Jimmy, and I think you would agree, that they are going to be going through the air more than what we have seen in the past. right?
So much of it is dictated by the health of Anthony Richardson. But yes, if he's healthy, I think this is going to be an aerial attack with a balanced running game approach to not have full wear and tear on Jonathan Taylor. I think that all the goals that Michael Pittman Jr. has outlined are achievable. And Jake, before we dive into the numbers here, wouldn't you agree on paper, even if Richardson's not healthy, on paper, if it's A.D. Mitchell or Alec Pierce, if he finally turns that corner, the weapons they have for the first time in a long time
Correct.
are going to distract away from defenses focusing solely
They're
on
going to
him.
help him, right?
Yeah.
Correct. He has 15 total touchdowns in the course of his first 4 years with the Colts, his best 6 in 2021. One would hope that the weapons around him would increase that. Eddie, did you determine what time we're giving away the fair tickets?
2:30.
Well, that's fair. Did you see what I did there?
Yes.
George Bremer joining us top of the hour. You know what I checked last night, Jimmy, that I have not checked in a while, and I think finally things are starting to become a little bit more clear, is our race for the beer.
Well, by the way, Jimmy and I lost our bets yesterday because Cute Fella lost to the Miami Marlins.
Oh.
So we're making progress.
Here's the thing about Cute Fella.
Is that a turning point moment, Eddie?
Well, I don't know.
Part of what makes Cute Fella cute, and for those that are unaware, Cute Fella is the Baltimore Orioles. That I dubbed them that forever ago because of that. That's exactly what the little fella on the hat looks like he's saying, right? He's a cute fella. And then I went to the IndyCar race in Baltimore, which went around Camden Yards, and I went into the official gift shop of the Baltimore Orioles, and I was trying to lobby for them that their mascot should be called Cute Fella. And the ladies at the gift shop made me a T-shirt with the logo with the hashtag cute, and it said hashtag
cool.
Cute Fella. It was great.
You still have that?
It did survive the purge, but I'll be honest, I can't find it,
Man,
which is
I've been
disappointing. So, Cute Fella right now is at 60-40.
Plot twist, it was never made.
What's that?
Plot twist, it was never made.
What's that?
You think it's a false story? You don't think the T-shirt was ever made?
Oh, believe you me. Ask Nick Yeoman or anybody that was working
I believe
IndyCar.
the T-shirt was made.
You know what? I have a picture somewhere of me with it, I can assure you. But having said that, 60-40 is Cute Fella's record. That's irrelevant except for the following. That ties them with Cleveland for the best record in the American League. When we had our contest beginning of the year, the three of us each had to pick from the team that was expected to, in the over-under, be under 500 for the year. Eddie went first and took the Miami Marlins. They are at 36-65.
And let me check the map. Okay, that's under 500.
That is indeed.
Okay.
Well under, right?
Yep.
The Milwaukee Brewers, for whatever reason, had been playing. At one point, they'd played like 4 fewer games than the number of games being played between Cleveland and Milwaukee. Because you took Cleveland, I took Milwaukee. They now have both played the same number of games, so we can now oh, no, I take that back. Milwaukee now has played one more game, but Milwaukee is now officially 2.5 back. It's a little easier to follow. So,
and we did double or nothing from our hockey beer bet as well.
That's right. So you're going to get a 12-pack, right?
Whoa, we got a lot of season left.
There is, but the Guardians have been good. I mean,
they have been really good.
They've been consistent. National League, by the way, the Dodgers at 61-41. But the best record in all of baseball belongs to the Philadelphia Phillies at 64-37. Are the Phillies like the most really good team every year?
They're just such a weird franchise. Like, they were the first to 1,000 losses 15 years ago, right? Or 10 years ago. Like, I remember that being a big deal. But like they have losing in their history, but they also have, feels like every other year.
They seem to be either like the best team in baseball or terrible,
no
right?
in between.
But even their players. I mean, Bryce Harper's kind of become a likable guy. He wasn't when he first came in, I didn't think, because he was pretty cocky, but he's a pretty likable dude. And he's obviously a great player and fun to watch. But in general, I don't know, the Phillies, like they changed they need to go back to, and everybody says this, everybody talks about the uniforms from their childhood. Those are the best uniforms they ever had. But I do like the early 80s Phillies uniforms, the kind of baby blue with the maroon. Sure. I prefer that over the red and white pinstripes, but you're a pinstripe guy, right?
I am a big pinstripe guy.
And do you like those pinstripes?
I like the red and white. I mean, look, it's hard when in that sport, anytime you see pinstripes and it's not the Yankees, it feels like a knockoff. I'll just say it.
They still wear the powder blue.
They wear them occasionally, correct?
Yeah.
But it's not their main. It's not their main.
I don't think it's in their primary uniform rotation.
Primary, thank you.
Yeah.
I think it's their typical Saturday or Sunday day game jersey. I can't remember.
Now, the fact that you would know that those are even designated is
well, see,
impressive.
The City Connect uniforms are for Friday and Saturday nights.
Okay.
By the way, most Yankee fans,
unless you're a Yankee fan.
Well, exactly. So I'm about to say, most Yankee fans would, mock me for this take. I do get envious of the City Connect jerseys. Like, I understand there's something so classic about the Yankees uniform, they would never do it. But sometimes I get envious of the City Connects. I do.
Who has what franchise in Major League Baseball, what franchise has the greatest chasm between the level of actual, like, quality of the franchise versus the amount that you see people wearing their hat? Which franchise has a mainstream hat in terms of the fashion of wearing the baseball cap, but the franchise itself is not a mainstream, well-liked team?
Ooh.
I mean, the Yankees, for example, you see Yankees hats everywhere, but they're
all the
also a
time.
huge. Same with the Dodgers,
Right.
And I'm going to take Cubs and Reds off the table because we're in the area, and the Cardinals, we're in the area where you would see those. Although you don't see a lot of Cardinals hats, but there are a ton of Cardinals fans.
Very, very knowledgeable.
They are very knowledgeable fans. They don't. Here's the thing: they don't need baseball hats because they all have thinking caps.
That's right.
It's got to be. Would it be the Pittsburgh Pirates? I see a fair amount of people wearing Pittsburgh Pirates.
But are you doing
Pirates
the same
hats.
thing with the? Shouldn't they be off the board too with the Cubs and the Reds because they're affiliated
And the Indianapolis
with the
Indians.
Yeah, but I just mean in like Chuck D wore a Pittsburgh Pirates hat, and like in movies there are characters that have been like Pirates fans because of Roberto Clemente, and
I feel like I see a Mets hat every now and again.
that's fair. That's not a bad one. I mean, Houston, I like the old Houston one. I don't know that I see the new ones as much.
I see Giants hats pretty decently.
Dodgers.
I feel like the airport.
Well, I said Dodgers. I mean, Dodgers.
It's in that same frame of.
Yeah, Dodgers are a historic.
If they're historically great, then they're off the list.
I had a buddy in high school that. I got it. I got the answer here. I had a buddy, by the way, that was a huge. That always wore a Royals hat. Here we go. How about the Detroit Tigers? You do see people wearing Detroit Tigers hats because of like Doughboy wore it and Magnum PI wore one, and it's an awesome looking logo, and but yet are people like, oh man, the Tigers,
the Braves.
The Braves is a really good one. I mean, the Braves is a really good one too, for sure.
Losers.
You're not a Braves fan, Eddie?
They're losing 9-4 to the Reds right now.
Oh, okay. It's a today thing. I understand.
Speaking of the 9, they're
In the
9
fifth.
games. They're 9 games back behind Philly, but they're also 9 games over 500. For what
And
it's
like
worth.
50 games above the Marlins.
The Reds, who are having a fire sale, just 10 games back. By the way, George Bremer joins us next.
Colts camp well underway. Opening stages with initial comments galore from the likes of Chris Ballard, Ryan Kelly, for that audio throughout the show as well. One of our very best covering all things Colts camp. He is George Bremer. Nice enough to take some time with us. George, thanks as always for making the time, and for you going into Colts camp with us having peace and quiet and no real off-the-field issues, mainly on-field topics of conversation and the thought of not worrying about contract holdouts or the like. We discussed early on in the program Ryan Kelly and the thought of an early extension for him perhaps not coming with the comments that he made and the comments that Chris Ballard made. Is this a non-story because of the work ethic of Ryan Kelly and the thought that he's probably not going to make a big stink about this the way premium position players would?
Yeah, I think he made it pretty clear that he and his side wanted to get something done, that he wants to stay in Indianapolis, and that they made the approach to the Colts. And, the Colts said they really don't have interest in that at that time. Chris Ballard, made it pretty clear later that they're always open to talking with guys who have been a big part of this franchise for a while. And obviously Kelly's been the anchor of that offensive line, but I don't think it's going to blow up. I don't think he's going to be visiting the bus at any point during a training camp practice here in the next couple of weeks.
George, the Ryan Kelly comment earlier today that Jimmy was just alluding to, I was surprised by it, quite frankly. And you tell me, I mean, you obviously have your, ear to the pulse of the Colts year round, probably more so than I. But I was a little surprised that Ryan Kelly would be seeking an extension, or was it more so that do you think he went to them saying, hey, I'd like to retain? I was always under the impression that he was just kind of a year-to-year guy. Do you think the Colts also were surprised that he would want to start negotiating towards going beyond this season?
I don't know if they were surprised so much as, I think their stance is pretty obvious. There's been a lot of injuries in the recent history with Ryan, and obviously concussions are a real concern. He's had a lot, and the last one seemed pretty scary. I mean, they're all scary. They're brain injuries, so they're all highly concerning. But it felt like he was out for a little while with that one last year, and it just felt like it was something that everybody involved was concerned with. And I think, from a team standpoint, you want to look and see, can he get through an entire season healthy? He's obviously advancing in age. They've got a guy out of Wisconsin that they just drafted in Tanner Bordellini, who's a potential replacement down the road. So there's no real sense from the team, I think, to get something done immediately. They've got time, and they're going to use that. I think from Ryan Kelly's standpoint, I think it was more just he knew that he wants to be here. He's just recently become a father. His family's got roots here. I think for him, he just kind of wants to get that security of, okay, there's a 2-year deal, a 3-year deal, or whatever it may be, and we'll see how it ultimately plays out. I don't think either side is ruling anything out at this point, but you do kind of feel like the writing might be on the wall a little bit that that there could be a breakup soon.
Could you see him still playing regardless of uniform another 3 to 4 seasons?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And we were talking about that kind of in between those player interviews today, and Chris Ballard talking. Some of us, is he a guy that's going to want to move all over the country with a young family? I don't know what his appetite for that will be. It'll be really interesting to see how that goes. I think that's part of why he approached them the way that he did. I think he would like to get something locked in where he can say, okay, this is the last contract of my career, and I'm going to play the next 2, 3, 4 years here in Indy and have it done. And again, that maybe that's something that they come to an agreement on, a 2 or 3 year deal at the end of the year, but it's obviously not going to happen now. And I think it's definitely, there's a lot of reasons the Colts have a lot they want to see before they would be interested in something like that.
George Bremer is our guest. He's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line. He is with the Herald Bulletin in Anderson, has been the Colts beat writer for many years for them. George, aside from the obvious, which would be Anthony Richardson, and I'll throw Jonathan Taylor into the mix too because he's pretty invaluable at his position. But the player that has been hit by the injury bug in the last year or two that is truthfully the most underratedly important to stay healthy because they are so critically important to what the Colts want to do, and also maybe have the least number of players that can back them up adequately, would be who?
I'd say Julian Blackmon. I mean, he's had an outstanding year last year as strong safety, but we've seen him, get banged up every year of his career. Last year, it looked like he was going to make it all the way through. He got that shoulder injury right at the end. They're not able to finish things out and go to the playoffs. I think that safety position is really high on the list of concerns for most people who watch this team. And I think when you look at, that spot in particular, at his calming influence, the way he communicates back there, his physical play. He's also been known to be a little bit of a ball hawk. I think all those things put together, the lack of depth behind him. If he goes down, I think it's a serious problem for this team.
By the way, Julian Blackmon, I believe, don't quote me on this, Eddie, I think this is right, is going to be on with J&V today, correct? Julian Blackmon on with J&V later today. George Bremer is on with us right now talking about the Colts in training camp. Chris Ballard did say, for those that did not hear it earlier, Anthony Richardson will have no limitations. George, does that give us the free pass to freak out the second that he misses a practice?
I mean, it's going to, right? That's kind of how that works. There's no limitations on him. He even tried to downplay even further. They downplayed it when it happened, but he tried to downplay even further that, sitting out that last day of minicamp, and said he'd thrown so many footballs the day before that even if he had been completely healthy, it might have been a good idea to scale him back that day. So they're saying, he's full go. So yeah, if he's not out there at some point over the next couple of weeks in Westfield, there will be a freak out, undoubtedly.
George, doesn't that seem like then, though, and Chris Ballard is as savvy as they come. I mean, one of the areas that I definitively tip the cap with him is I think he handles the media very well. Doesn't it feel unnecessary to say something like that when you know now that with the heightened status, not just the scar tissue of previous quarterbacks, but the scar tissue specifically of this one, and just trying to get him on the field, that now you are welcoming that level of chaos and uncertainty? It feels unnecessary to say it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always going to be chaos, and with the quarterback position here, almost no matter what, just because there are so many scars, over the last few years with injuries and with the revolving door. And he was asked directly, because of the way minicamp ended. And, there's a lot of ways to answer that. He was pretty definitive with it. To me, I think it tells me that they feel really good about where Richardson is right now in his recovery, and they feel really strongly that shoulder is ready to go. But, yeah, there's no doubt about it. If he's sitting out next week, the week after, anywhere here, really before the start of the regular season, there's going to be a really quick callback to that quote today.
Colts beat writer for the Herald Bulletin, George Bremer, is our guest. He joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. George, in regards to Michael Pittman Jr. kind of laying out his outline expectations, goals for himself for the season, one thing that caught my eye after he mentioned those was looking at this receiver room. Regardless of what happens, if Alec Pierce ascends to where he should be, or if A.D. Mitchell winds up taking over that role, is this the best collection of wideouts that Michael Pittman Jr. has had around him as a Colt?
I think so. I think you can make that argument. He doesn't have a veteran leader like he did early on, like T.Y. Hilton, but the depth with that group, and I know the Colts really feel good about Ashton Doolin as well. We'll see if he's able to work into that mix. But Josh Downs was another guy that Chris Ballard was really heavily praising today. Said he really feels like he did a lot of things last year that were underappreciated, and that he feels like this is a guy who's ready to really blow up and have a great season. I know they have really good feelings about A.D. Mitchell and his potential, and Pierce is really in a make-or-break year. So, I feel like they've got a deep group. I think it's deeper than it has been. I think saying that it's the best group around Pittman since he's been here, I feel like that's something you can make a really strong argument for sure.
Do you think Alec Pierce, George, a year ago, was it Alec Pierce still getting slow out of the gate that was the issue, or was it the guy throwing him the ball that was and that's not a knock on Gardner Minshew. I'm just saying, like, did Alec Pierce's skill set equate with what they were trying to do last year without Anthony Richardson on the field?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both. I'm sure if you go to Alec, he's going to tell you there are things that he could do better. There's no question about that, especially early in the year. But there's obvious elements there on film. Some of them you didn't even have to go back and check the game film. It was pretty obvious live where he got open and they just weren't looking that way. I think that's going to be the real interesting thing this year. There are a lot of things you can fall back on last year for excuses, and saying, well, it was hard getting used to a new rookie, and then just as you're starting to get on the same page with him, he goes down, you've got to switch and start all over again, and never really did seem like he and Gardner got on the same page, and that's all out the window now. You've got two guys who are going to look deep and look deep often, because if Anthony Richardson does go down, one thing we can be fairly confident in is that Joe Flacco will throw the deep ball. Anybody who watched him last year in Cleveland or saw even just a little bit of what he's done this spring can tell you he's not afraid to pull the trigger. So I think a lot of that goes out the window now, and I think you're going to see Alec Pierce make that leap. If he gets open again like he did a year ago, I think they're going to be looking his way. It's going to be very interesting, though, because Mitchell has a very similar skill set. What they're going to be asked to do in this offense is very similar. And so that battle, I think, is going to be something that's going to be really fun to watch over the next few weeks and as the preseason games get started. And it might be one that, continues week to week throughout the season.
Okay, I'm going to go over with you, George, for fans and for people listening, just kind of the way this lays out with training camp. So humor me here with a couple of really dumb questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
The players had to report today by what time?
I believe it was 9 a.m. I know they had a meeting with Coach Steichen fairly early in the morning, and they had to, get physicals and all those things done before that.
Okay, and then once they reported at 9, is it, hey, because, this is different than the old days when everybody's showing up with sleeping bags and pillows and they're living in dorms. So is their day fully laid out for them today, or did they check in and then tomorrow everything gets underway and they've got to come back? How does that work? And where do players stay during camp, or are they commuting from home?
Yeah, they have a pretty full day this first day because you've got all those medicals, and then you're going to go through different team functions they have. They usually have a big dinner at some point, too, on that first day of camp. It's usually St. Elmo's or something like that, catered in, a big team meal to get everything started. They stay in the hotel. I can't remember the brand name of it, but there's a hotel right there on Grand Park facility that they're at. So they're right there, in Westfield the entire time. Just a little bit better accommodations than the old dorm rooms, that's for sure.
And, okay, so they stay there in the hotel, and then I guess what I'm getting at is, are they free to come and go? That sounds the wrong way, but you get what I'm saying. How much of a true camp is this now?
Yeah, no, it's still the same way. I mean, once they get up here, they're pretty much sequestered in Westfield, and they have off days, obviously scheduled around, and when it is a player off day, they can go back home. But other than that, they're here for pretty much the next 3 weeks. Pretty much just everybody sequestered there in Westfield. One of the last NFL teams out there still doing it this way. Most of them, still have gone back to their year-round facility. So the Colts are just a handful of teams that are really going somewhere else, staying there. And I know that Chris Ballard, Jim Irsay, they both have spoke before. They really value this as a bonding experience and something they think is really good for the team.
George, I don't want to read too much into this, but for Anthony Richardson, when all you're looking for is positive signs of growth or anything that can help him along the way, with this being year 2 for him of going through a camp, how much of a benefit, if at all, is it to yet again have a veteran presence in that quarterback room like Joe Flacco to help him in any area, but especially just getting comfortable once again with camp?
Yeah, I think, especially since he's got, 84 passes in his NFL career right now, something really, phenomenally low number. He's still a rookie in most measurements. It's great to have somebody in there. Joe Flacco is one of those guys that has seen everything, very much like Philip Rivers, Matt Ryan when they were here. He's been in the league forever. He's done everything you can do in this league, seen pretty much everything a defense can throw at you. And I think having that extra set of eyeballs on the sideline, in meeting rooms, it can only help Anthony Richardson. And I think it's going to be something that, even throughout camp, you could see it even in the spring. Richardson would go through and do his rep, and then he would watch Flacco and see how he's doing things. And when, that third quarterback gets out there, they'll go and talk a little bit. And I'm sure part of that conversation is, why did you do this way? What did you see? And, Flacco telling him, hey, on this play, if you wait the extra second, or if you, use your eyes to move a defender, all the little things that Joe Flacco is going to know from his, decade plus in this league. I think that's something that's invaluable to a quarterback like Anthony Richards, still trying to find his own identity in his own way in the NFL.
Joining us on the Express Road Tire and Auto guest line, he is George Bremer of the Herald Bulletin. George, the debate last year was, do you start or do you sit Anthony Richardson? And if you were in team sit him camp, it was because he would have the opportunity to learn and be like a sponge and soak up all the knowledge. He is forced to soak up all that knowledge because of injury, not by his own choice, a season ago. And one of the things we've heard from many a Colt personnel or coaching staff member is how much higher up his football IQ is year over year. Between now and week one, I'm not expecting him to be perfect, but how quickly will we know if that is the case? Like, oh man, his reads are far more efficient and quick and decisive than they were a year ago.
Yeah, you can see a little bit of that in the spring. You'll see a lot more of it in those joint practices when the Cardinals come, August 14th and 15th. Those are always big days. He's going to get a chance to see a defense that doesn't know what's coming, and he doesn't know the way they're going to line up, and you'll be able to read a lot of that there. You get a little bit of it in the preseason, but things are so vanilla there that, you never read in too much of those preseason games. I do think a lot of it's going to come from Shane Steichen, in what he's saying and how he is seeing this growth. I know that everybody in the building's super excited, and a lot of that comes down to the fact that what they knew about Richardson before they drafted him and what got confirmed day one he was in the building, he's absolutely devoted to work. He is in his playbook all the time. He's on the field as much as possible. He's throwing as much as he can. This is a guy who, if things don't go his way, it's not going to be because he didn't put the time in, he didn't study enough, he didn't work hard enough. None of those things are going to hold this kid back. And I think that's something that they feel like because of that last year, even after he went down, he stayed in every meeting mentally. He was in all the game plan meetings. He did everything but physically throw the ball. They felt like even in the spring that they could see him processing quicker. They could see the decision-making, decisions being made faster. I don't know if it's going to be as obvious, to the untrained eye, but I think you're going to hear a lot of it from Shane Steichen, and then you will see some of it, I think, particularly when the Cardinals are here for those joint practices.
But by the way, George, do you like vanilla, like ice cream and flavoring, that kind of thing?
I'm okay with it, yeah.
Jimmy, you a vanilla fan?
It's not my favorite ice cream, but I do like vanilla.
Do you know where vanilla comes from, by the way? Vanilla extract, artificial vanilla flavoring. Do you know where it comes from?
I do not.
Eddie, do you know this? George, you ready to never eat vanilla again?
I think it's going to be like how the sausage is made here.
Castoreum, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly or not. It is actually like I don't even know how to describe this necessarily. It's secreted by beavers, and it has a pleasant odor. It is used to, it's basically their pheromone. It comes from glands very close to their anal glands, and what they do is about 300 times a year, different groups take the beavers, they put them under an anesthetic, and then they milk out the secretion from near the anal glands, and that gives you your vanilla flavoring. I just thought you guys would like to know that. I'm pro beaver. I'm not going to lie to you. I like beaver. What's that?
Anytime I complain about my job, I'm going to remember that people have to milk beavers and feel a little bit better about it.
Let me tell you something. There are many variations that can be taken. George Bremer is our guest. We are talking about the Colts. They are underway at camp. George, I'll ask you the same question. I've asked several, and we're going to, I believe, hopefully talk to him during the course of the camp when we are out there live. But Shane Steichen now in year number 2. We talk so much about the evolution of players from year 1 to year 2. What's an area he needs to improve?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that's something I don't know if we talk enough about Steichen's growth as well. Jonathan Taylor brought that up today, that everybody talks about personnel. He said Shane's kind of a mad scientist, and he feels like he's a big part of what this team can do offensively. I think probably reining in some of those tendencies, having that understanding who he is as a coach. I think last year it was sort of throw a lot of things at the wall and try to see what works. And now can you keep that, giant Rolodex he's got of plays and an ability to change what the offense looks like from one week to the next, but also refine that enough so that you're not throwing too much at players. I think that's something that he walked a very good line last year with it. But I think the best coaches, they're able to kind of, yeah, sure, you're as multiple as you need to be and you're as complex as you need to be, but keeping it as simple as possible for the players themselves. So can you pare back some of this and tailor it so that you've got everything in that you need, but it's not getting too unwieldy? I think that's something in year two you really want to see from every head coach.
George, are we being too hard on the rest of the running back room behind Jonathan Taylor in terms of who could give him a spell when he needs it, or is it as reasons for pessimistic as there should be with that room?
Yeah, I mean, there is not much on the resume, right? I mean, you don't have anybody who's really established themselves over the course of an NFL season. Certainly nobody on the level of Zach Moss, out there now who have, gone out there, done it week in, week out. The Colts point a lot to the Pittsburgh game last year where Goodson had a really good day, and so did Sermon. But, it's one game. So I think it's fair. I think there's a lot of question about, is there enough behind him? You've got Goodson and Sermon, and then you've got Evan Hall, who, much like Anthony Richardson, for all intents and purposes, is still a rookie. They may have a lot of upside. They feel good about these guys. But there's not much on paper that you can point to as rationale. If Jonathan Taylor can't go in a given week, this is why you feel good about the running game.
George, lastly, I know obviously the Herald Bulletin in Anderson, where you are the Colts beat writer and the sports director. Does your work appear in periodicals other than just that newspaper throughout the state? Where can people continue to read your Colts coverage?
Yeah, all CNHI papers throughout Indiana. So the big ones are Logansport, Kokomo, Terre Haute, Jeffersonville. But you can see, I think there's 11 total papers daily. So, yep, you can't get away from me. Pretty much, if you live in the state, sooner or later, I will find you.
You are omnipresent. I like that, George. We appreciate it, man. Enjoy camp.
No problem. Thanks a lot, guys.
Talk to you soon. George Bremer, our friend up in Anderson. We have State Fair tickets to give away, which we're going to do next. There are some good shows at the free stage at the State Fair this year. We gave away tickets earlier for Primus, which is out at the Lawn. Now, did you say that you are granting me permission with whoever calls in for the State Fair tickets that they actually get to converse with us on the air this time, Eddie?
Yes, we have time for it this go-around.
That's fun, right?
I like it. We know children in particular.
Oh, kids love it.
We have to get it in before they go back to school.
We had a meeting yesterday where we went over some stuff, and they said that research and other things indicate that kids, when it comes to the get to know your listener, kids love it.
They said, though, also, I don't know if you read the second page of that survey, they didn't really like Eddie as the authoritative figure behind that decision-making. It was weird. They were very adamant about that.
You could have stopped that statement at figure, right?
Oh, my gosh.
That kind of goes without saying. State Fair tickets next. 239-1070 is the telephone number. Jimmy's plays of the day, which, by the way, a birdie told me, not yet official, but it may be shortly before when we do Jimmy's plays of the day that we have more word and verbiage to get to in opening and introducing that. But there's nothing official on that just yet. But we will give away the State Fair tickets next. Going swimmingly well for UCLA at Big Ten Media Day, a day after the Oregon Duck was swimming in the White River. Deshaun Foster, who is the former UCLA great football player, now the head coach, met with the media. It did not necessarily go well. We'll play that for you in just a minute because you're going to be like, wait, what? Because we were just – I call these, Jimmy, hot face moments or stare at the floor moments. You know when you were a kid and – like one kid would have to get up and read in front of the class or something, and it didn't go well, and you felt bad for them, so you either stared at the floor or your face got hot.
Secondhand embarrassment. Secondhand embarrassment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hot face moment coming up. But before that, we have tickets to give away to the great Indiana State Fair. Eddie, the dates of the State Fair this year are?
I was trying to figure that out earlier, but the website was not working for me.
August 2nd to the 18th.
Thank you. They just updated Jimmy's computer, so he's got the World Wide Web. Right?
Okay.
Now, he's not locked out like I usually am out of mine. August 2nd through, what was that again?
The 18th.
I love the State Fair.
Me
love
too.
It. Now, are we going to do this? In what fashion are we giving these tickets away? We're just doing get to know your listener and then just giving them away to somebody that we like?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. What line are we going with?
Let's go with Ryan.
Ryan. Ryan, you are on the program. How are you, my friend?
Good.
Have you called the program before, Ryan?
No.
You've never called the program before. We're going to do a little segment here called Get to Know Your Listener. We've had a lot of success with this. Research says kids in particular love it. Are you willing to participate and get to know your listener, Ryan?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. If you don't mind me asking, Ryan, who was the president of the United States in your senior year of high school?
My senior year of high school, it would have been Joe Biden. Or no, Donald Trump. Donald Trump, I bet.
Okay, and so you obviously are a gentleman that would be still in your 20s, is that correct?
Wow, we're the same age.
What's that?
Yes, still
okay.
in my 20s.
Now, Ryan, when you were in high school, as you were cheering for the teams, the athletic teams of your high school, you were yelling what? A la Go Eagles, Go Tigers, Go what mascot were you yelling for?
Lions.
Lions, okay. And Ryan, are you native to the area?
No, actually, I moved down here about 2 years ago.
Okay, and what's her name that brought you here?
I worked at Coca-Cola. That's what brought me down here.
Oh, really? Now, Coca-Cola, if I'm not mistaken, and you correct me, and you stop me when I'm wrong, are you still with Coca-Cola, Ryan?
Yep. Currently,
okay.
actually driving back to our shop right now.
Okay, so now you tell me and stop me when I'm wrong here, okay? Coca-Cola would consist of, obviously, the Coke products, Coke, Coke Zero, Diet Coke, caffeine-free Diet Coke, etc. Is Sprite still underneath the Coke umbrella?
Yep.
Okay, how about Mellow Yellow? Are they still going with the Mellow Yellow, folks?
Yep.
Okay. Outside of that, now Dr. Pepper they're like a weird independent. Aren't they kind of like Notre Dame, and every once in a while they flirt with different conferences, but they still stay on their own? Is that right?
Well, it was that way until actually beginning of this year, Coke bought the rights to Dr. Pepper.
Okay, that's why I was thinking that was the case. Now, in doing that, did that upset already their existing relationship? Are they cheating on Mr. Pibb? Because isn't he also in the same family?
Yes, and honestly, I prefer Mr. Pibb, but.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, Dr. Pepper's got the doctorate, but still, Mr. Pibb. Now, which ones am I missing then in this little game that we're playing?
Well, let's see. You got Cherry Coke.
Yep.
You got Powerade.
Powerade, okay.
Any of the high C's.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay. How about Fruitopia? Is Fruitopia still around? Wasn't that a Coca-Cola product?
Yes, that is still around. They're actually starting to discontinue that.
At what point are you going to become impressed by my soft drink knowledge?
I already am.
All right, Ryan. Before we get to the event here with the ticket giveaway, I'm curious of this. I always ask people this. Tell me something you like or do not like about this show, and we will not be offended.
Something I like is honestly the little smart little takes that you always give about random facts that nobody else knows.
Okay.
I love that.
So like the vanilla just a minute ago?
Yeah, exactly. Did you know that vanilla actually comes from a near, nether region of the beaver? Did you know that?
I did not know that, and so you said it on the air.
Now, Ryan, lastly, the Lions is what high school? Was that Rushville?
No, it's actually Leo over in Leo, Indiana.
Leo, Indiana. Where exactly is now? That's Tom Allen's favorite town, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now
it is actually right outside of Fort Wayne, which I originally had gone to Northrop in Fort Wayne, but I switched to Leo for my final 3 years of high school.
And do you enjoy Indianapolis?
Yes, I actually, it's actually very fun to drive. I install fountain machines, so I drive from border to border, Richmond to Petersburg, and it's actually really cool having like a partner. He's been here 30 years, and it's cool driving past places, and he'll tell me all about them since I just moved down here.
Yeah, that's cool.
Like 30 years ago, this was there, and this was there,
So basically what you're getting at is your partner's a lot like myself.
Pretty much.
Well, Ryan, we greatly appreciate listening to the show. Did you say you have been to the State Fair before?
No, I have actually never been, and my 5-year-old was just asking if I could get him tickets.
I'll tell you what. What's the 5-year-old's name?
Zayden.
Gosh, if you'd have said Leo, I would have thought that was the weirdest thing ever. Okay, well, you are on your way, Ryan. You guys will enjoy it. Be sure to get a big ear of corn on the cob. You got to absolutely have him get an elephant ear while you're there, and then you got to walk the loop, and you got to ride at least one of the rides when you're at the State Fair. But enjoy it because it's great. It's everything Indiana all bundled into one.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
All right, appreciate it. Eddie will get your information, and that's how we do it. Now, as for Big Ten Media Day, Deshaun Foster is the head football coach at UCLA. And UCLA, I don't know if you knew this or not, you might have heard this, they're new to the Big Ten. UCLA, Washington, Oregon, and USC joining the Big Ten. Oregon made a big splash. They inflated a huge duck. They floated it along the White River. Oregon made a big splash.
Stole my heart. Day one of Big Ten
Washington,
Media
we're
Day.
familiar with Washington because their head coach a year ago that's now at Alabama.
I'm very
previously
familiar
was
with
at Indiana.
Washington.
Yeah, Eddie is a big fan of Washington. Their quarterback last year was an IU transfer. We're very familiar with Washington, right? USC, long rivalry, long tradition with Notre Dame. We know about USC. Michael Pittman Jr. played at USC. No introduction needed for USC. UCLA, on the other hand, Deshaun Foster, talented running back, big name in UCLA football history, now the head coach. And he wanted to make sure that we knew all about UCLA football. A great way to start out and a great first impression to be made for UCLA football at Big Ten Media Day with Midwestern Media and the fans of Indianapolis, Indiana. And then it was a hot-faced stare at the floor moment.
Coach Foster, welcome to the Big Ten. We'll begin with your opening statement.
How you guys doing? I'm happy to be here. Glad to be a part of this great conference. Finally putting two great emblems together, UCLA and the Big Ten. We're a school that's won, 123 championships, so this fits us being right in this conference.
Okay, so far so good.
Football-wise, we're just excited. You know, I'm sure you guys don't know too much about UCLA, but our football program, but we're in LA.
Okay. Writing this down in LA. Okay. What else, Deshaun?
It's us and USC.
Okay. Yep. USC also in LA.
It's another fact.
We
You excited to be here? Nervous?
I'm just basically excited, really.
Okay.
That's it. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a lot, actually. Tell us about your time as a Carolina Panther or a 49er running back, or what you learned at Texas Tech, or what you learned as a graduate assistant at UCLA, or as the running backs coach before becoming the head coach.
I can promise you two things. One,
poor guy.
Three things. One, yes, I feel very bad for him. But two, I feel very bad for that PR staff because they're running around like, what did we just do? How did we not prepare the coach for his
Who's the
opening
one to
statement?
give him the bullet points?
And three, he'll never have another press conference like that. They will make sure he's prepared and ready to go because it's made the rounds all over social media.
You feel bad. Here's the thing, though. You don't need – you know what? This is what I would say to Deshaun Foster. You know who everybody made fun of? Dan Campbell in his opening press conference. Exactly. Everybody made fun of Dan Campbell. Now
Nick Sirianni.
Nick Sirianni's a big one, yeah. And then he goes to the Super Bowl, right?
Adam Gase. Oh, wait, that's not a good one. My bad. Sorry.
I'm looking right now at his high school, Deshaun Foster. Deshaun Foster, it's one of my favorite games to play. Who are the famous people from your high school? He attended Tustin High School in Tustin, T-U-S-T-I-N, Tustin, California. High school's been around for just over 100 years, okay? Now let me read for you the prominent alumni. North Central High School is the largest, at the time that I graduated from North Central, it was the largest non-bust high school in the United States of America, okay? And yet, while I love North Central, hail our Panthers, hats off to thee. For a school as big as it is, it has a relatively like esoteric or at best regionalized notable alumni list. Listen to this list of Tustin High School. Sam Baker, who was a first-round pick of the Atlanta Falcons. Okay, fine, whatever. They must have a huge athletic program there. Bo Bell, who played for the Cleveland Browns. Heath Bell played for the Tampa Bay Rays. Deshaun Foster, who you just heard from, did not do well in speech class. Doug Gottlieb, Mark Grace, baseball player. I mean, who doesn't know Mark Grace, right? Sean Green, another very good baseball player. There was one other one I saw in here. Several, a ton of. Here's a national champion Olympian. There are a ton of. Oh, how about this? Eva Angelina, adult film actress, attended the high school but graduated from Foothill High School. Do you want to Google her and let me know what you can find out about her, Eddie?
What high school is this?
Did you already say Cuba Gooding Jr.? Did I miss that part?
Is he on there also?
Yeah, he's on there as well.
I mean, that's impressive, right? I don't see. Oh, yeah, Cuba Gooding Jr. right there. Sorry, I was so transfixed on Eva Angelina that I missed Cuba Gooding Jr., right? Oh, the lead singer of Fastball?
Did you say Tustin?
I think it's Tustin, yeah. Where is that? Can you see where it is? It's got to be suburban L.A., right?
Yes, California. Tustin, California.
Well, I already said California, but where in California is a big state. It's its own economy.
It's in Tustin.
I understood, but it's got to be suburban L.A., right?
Orange County.
Okay, so that is – Orange County's cool. And I don't know if you know this or not.
My wife's favorite Real Housewives, by the way.
Well, my favorite housewife of Orange – that's right – of Orange County is Eva Angelina, who's an adult film actress. By the way, she won the 2007 Night Moves Award for Best Actress.
Mm.
She was born in Huntington Beach. Oh, here we go. She entered the industry by entering a newspaper advertisement. They advertised this in Southern California?
Apparently.
Do you think she knows about vanilla extract?
Yes, I think she does. She certainly knows its derivative. We'll come back and mercifully do Jimmy's plays of the day next.
Today's plays of the day all focused on the MLB. We'll start first pitch time 3:10. We'll take the Boston Red Sox to win outright on the money line over the Colorado Rockies. We will double down and hope for a better outcome this time and take the Baltimore Orioles outright to win on the money line against the Miami Marlins.
Root for me.
Last one for you, we'll lay 1.5 on the run line for the Texas Rangers as they host the Chicago White Sox. Eddie, any plays from you?
Typically, I would take the Braves with them having Chris Sale on the mound, but they have now lost 7 of their last 10, and they can't score. No Ozzie Albies, no Ronald Acuna, so I'm staying away from that. So nothing for me.
No plays for Eddie. So those are your plays of the day on our end. Red Sox money line, Orioles money line, Texas Rangers minus 1.5 on the run line.
You guys have seen The Fugitive, right?
Yes.
No.
It's been a minute, but yes, I have.
In The Fugitive.
By the way, I should share this real quick. Ryan, our winner, when he was giving me his info and he was spelling out, it told me his last name. He made a Shawshank Redemption reference. I didn't tell him. I didn't know the reference he was making. So
what reference did he make?
It was in reference to his last name.
Okay. Is it Dufresne?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, Ryan. In The Fugitive, when they're trying to track down why Harrison Ford's Dr. Richard Kimball is trying to track down who killed his wife, they figure out there's a company called Devlin McGregor, and the head detective for the federal agents, or the lead federal agent, Tommy Lee Jones, then becomes obsessed with Devlin McGregor. And every time that they're talking about Richard Kimball and trying to find out where he is, he's like too busy looking at photos and research of Devlin McGregor. That's pretty much me with Eva Angelina now since this epiphany. In terms of your plays of the day, I was busy looking at pictures of Eva Angelina. I did so though on my mobile device. I figured that probably was the smarter thing to do, right?
Nice clarification there.
I just wanted to make sure in case the company was searching things over.
Well, we don't have an HR department to fire you anyway.
That is true, actually.
Oh, you meant the actual company.
That's right. The query company has no HR department because anytime that you get notification from the HR, it's never good news.
The parent company of the company, as it were.
The querying company has no HR department because, the HR department never calls to say, we had a clerical error and we owe you money. No, they say, bring in the playbook, right?
Exactly.
Here's a packet with your, believe me, if you have my work history, Cobra means more than just Dave Parker. I can tell you that much.
Whenever they ask for the playbook, it's never to upgrade the playbook. It's always to take it away.
That is absolutely true. What do we have on the big program tomorrow, Eddie? I know John is up next, and he is going to have Julian Blackman on the show. But I would assume that tomorrow we're going to focus more even on the Colts and then see when officially will Andrew Nembhard make it, I guess, official that he's locked in for 3 more years. Those are some of the things we'll be looking at, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. We'll have Joel Erickson on tomorrow, recap the first practice for the horse tomorrow, and then maybe we'll have a Colts player tomorrow as well.
The horse. By the way, several people questioning me on my beaver knowledge. Listen, what did I just get done talking about?
There's a reason why it's called vanilla extract.
Right, that's exactly right. Vanilla comes from a flower. Beaver juice vanilla is generally used in perfumes and colognes. Okay? Somebody else said, where did you get all this nonsense? I said they only use it like 300 times a year for actual vanilla extract. But I'm telling you, there is a vanilla scent that comes from the beaver that is in the nether regions of the beaver. That's a fact. The FDA considers it to be safe. It doesn't mean that they use it primarily and that they haven't come up with other things, but it's there. And I like the beaver. What's the difference between the beaver and the otter? Do we know?
One of those animals has his own gas station that he can go to.
That's right. One of them made a lot of money off Buc-ee's, right? Yeah. Do we know the difference? Do you know the difference between a beaver and an otter?
They're 40 times.
Probably, right?
Yeah.
There has to be some. I think beavers are cool, man.
Is it the tail? Is the tail length?
I don't know. Eddie, can you look up difference between a beaver and an otter? I think they're almost the same thing, right? To me, they're both cool.
No similarities whatsoever.
No similarities whatsoever?
Otters are large, carnivorous mammals. Beavers are semi-aquatic rodents who strictly follow a vegetarian lifestyle.
This from the BBC. Beavers' tails are long, flat, and scaly and are much like a paddle. Otters have long, sleek bodies and more pointed,
so wait a minute.
dog-like heads.
Beavers are the one with the big buck teeth, right?
Yes.
They all need Invisalign. So why do beavers have the big teeth if they are herbivores and the others are carnivores? Wouldn't you need the big teeth to like rip through like bone and meat?
Why would you ask this question? Because you're going to be up all night thinking about it. Now you're going to make me up all night thinking about it.
I guess it's for building the dam, right?
Yeah.
For the dam house?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know, by the way, do you know why beavers more often than not find themselves unable to get inside their house?
Why is that?
Because they lose the damn keys.
Mm.
I'll be here all week. Is John on remote or is he in? Do we know? Is he going to come in and mercifully save us from the end of this program?
He is here today.
I think if I suggest trading a Pacers player, he'll appear. He doesn't like when I do that.
Listen, the Nembhard thing to me, if you're just joining us at the beginning of the show, we told you that Andrew Nembhard has agreed, at least it seems, to a 3-year deal for $57 million for the Pacers. That keeps the Pacers now with some core players signed through 27.
Yeah.
TJ McConnell is going to be interesting because I think they would like to retain him, but now maybe they have a clearer picture on how much money they're going to have for he, Matherin, and Miles Turner. Those are the three.
The Nembhard extension is a win for all parties involved. He gets a well-deserved pay raise, and the Pacers are in a win-win situation with him. If they want to keep him a part of this core, it's done so without taking up a massive percentage of the cap. And if 2 years they're looking for an upgrade, and he continues to be the type of distributor and scorer that he is, he would be a valuable trade piece. It's a win-win on all fronts for the Pacers getting this done. The only negative is you're paying him a little bit more next year than you would have otherwise, but you have him locked in for the foreseeable future.
But I'm telling you, McConnell's interesting too because I think they would really like to retain him.
Yeah.
But it's going to come down to probably years. I don't think money's as much an issue as how many years are you going to pay him and keep him on the books, because you know that you have that other money that needs.
Well, Jake, if they make him a coach like you hoped they would someday, or you could see him being a coach, then that's off the cap altogether.
That's true.
So you're all good.
And he will be within the organization in some way, shape, or fashion. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I agree.
Because he's very, very popular. All right, thanks to George Bremer for joining us. Also to Zach
Osterman.
Thank you. Zach Osterman from the Indianapolis Star. That joined us on the program today. More on the Colts now, getting underway with practice as opposed to just reporting that tomorrow. Thanks so much for listening to Query Company. John's up next.